I would ask that during this meeting, please limit individual conversations. This ensures that commission members and applicants can hear one another. Please remain quiet until you're called upon, and when you do address the commission, please come up here to this podium and state your name and address for our records. Doesn't matter how many times, every time you're coming up to talk, please state name and address for the record. Before the commission votes on any item, I will ask if anyone from the public wishes to speak. This is something I neglect often, so my fellow commissioners will help me out there too. Speakers that are coming up to the podium are given 3 minutes to relay information to commission members. Please be thorough and also be mindful of your time. The agenda and documents for today's meeting are located on the PrimeGov website. If you are following along online, select Agenda on the right-hand side of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting to see which items are being discussed. Written comments received more than 24 hours before today's meeting were posted online and were shared with commission members. At this point, if you brought new materials, new evidence, new documents with you, those may not be shared with the commission, mainly because we just don't have time to review all of that ahead of time. So if you brought new materials with you, please keep them at your seat as we cannot accept and review. Keith, can you please call roll?
Fudge.
Present.
Jordan.
Present.
Gaines.
Present.
McBride.
Present.
Poor.
Present.
Whitley.
Present.
We have quorum.
Excellent. Procedures for today's meeting are noted in the agenda. For anyone unfamiliar with the process, please refer to the procedures section. There are 2 items that we do like to specifically note regarding this meeting process. One involves certificates of appropriateness. The other involves appeals. Regarding certificates of appropriateness or CAs, after an application is approved and the 10-day protest period has expired, the HP officer will mail the CA to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA is issued. Please contact HP staff for final design review inspection or to withdraw items that will not be completed. Regarding appeals to the Board of Adjustments, any person aggrieved by a decision granting or denying the CA may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustments. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk at the Board of Adjustments. Katie, what news do we have from the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer? Anything we need to move today?
The only thing I need to report is that item HPCA 23-00134 at 424 Northwest 27th Street has been withdrawn by the applicant. So that application is closed out at this time, and no action needs to be taken on that item. So if you were here specifically to discuss that item or to hear the outcome of that decision, there will be no action today, and it will not go forward with demolition at this point.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, commissioners, have you all had a chance to review the minutes from the November 1st meeting? And if so, do we have a motion, any questions, or perhaps a motion to accept or modify? Moved by Commissioner Gaines. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Jordan. Please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, the minutes were passed by a vote of, let's see, 5 voting yes and 1 abstaining. Let's see, we'll move on to code enforcement. Katie, anything from code enforcement?
Nothing specific to report. As always, if you all have questions about any of the items, or if any member of the public has questions about an item in that report, it's always attached to the meeting packet. Feel free to reach out to HP staff or to the Action Center for more information.
Okay. Any continuance announcements or requests?
We have one item under continuance requests for HPCA 23-00136 at 620 Northwest 18th Street. They'd like to be continued to the January 3rd meeting.
Do we need a motion on that?
Yes.
The commissioner would like to make a motion on continuing that item. Moved by Commissioner Gaines, second by Commissioner Poore, I think is what I heard. Please vote in PrimeGov. Rita, is that one we need to ask if there's any members of the public that wish to speak?
Gaines, your vote, please.
You just stand there and see that it's going to be continued.
Okay.
So if anybody's there, you could say that part.
Okay. All right, well, that continuance has passed unanimously. Let's see, Katie, anything under public hearings, dilapidated structures?
Nothing under dilapidated structures, National Register nominations, or consent docket.
Oh, it's the first time we haven't had anything on the consent docket. Okay, well, that'll take us to item D, the cases for individual consideration. We've got 8 today that we're going to be discussing. And we will start with item number 1, HPCA 23-00044 at 621 Northwest 18th Street. Is the applicant present?
So this is in Mesta Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Brooks Magnus, Jolly-Bird Design for David DeWitt for a certificate of appropriateness to 7, construct new garage, elective, 2, remove existing parking pad and paving, elective, 3, install new patio, elective, 4, construct new fence, elective, and 14, install driveway apron and sidewalk at rear, elective. The commission heard this previously and continued it. We have not received any additional information from the applicant at this time. I think they were prepared to discuss the item, but you don't have new information in your packet, and we did recommend another continuance.
Okay, perfect.
Fallon Brooks Magnus, 733 Northwest 22nd Street, representing applicant. We're just going to request a continuance on this one.
Okay.
Okay, January or February?
January.
Our cutoff because the holidays push back our packet and our notice and everything for January, so any new information we're going to need by Tuesday of next week.
Why do you hate me? That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, I will motion to continue HBCA 23-00044 to the January Historic Preservation meeting.
Moved by Commissioner Jordan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Poore. Did you say the January 2nd meeting?
I just said the January meeting.
Okay. Well, that motion was passed unanimously. We'll see you in January. All right, moving on to item number 2, HPCA 23-00115 at 2522 North Chartel. And I believe we have one commissioner that needs to abstain from this particular vote, and that would be Commissioner Whitley.
And this is, got an error on the agenda. It's in Paseo, not Mesta Park. Consideration and possible action on application by Asa Highsmith, Common Works Architects for Micah McGann, M68 LLC, for certificate of appropriateness to 1 demolished church. Elective, the commission has seen this application previously and was continued to allow for further discussion between the applicant and residents, site visits, et cetera. You do not have any new documentation in your packet, but the applicant's here prepared to discuss the case.
Excellent. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Asa Highsmith, 435 Northwest 23rd Street, Suite 214. We gave a pretty lengthy presentation last time. I think today, we'd love to just answer any questions or even hear from those that are here to speak first, and then maybe get a chance to wrap up with some final thoughts at the end.
Just a quick question before we go down that path. Has anything changed since last time we visited? I mean, I know you met with some folks, and
We've given several tours. We've held it open even to the commissioners. I don't think, I'll be honest, I don't think anything new's come from that. We've had long, lengthy discussions with several people about potential opportunities, and all opportunities that we had previously explored. So we don't see any new light at the end of the tunnel personally, but happy to continue the discussion today.
Sure. Let's check. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to note, you all have a number of letters related to this project at your seats. Most of those were forwarded to you well in advance of the meeting, but there was one that came in late today that is at your seat as well.
Asa, I have one question. You talked about that you had meetings, prospective people on maybe different avenues to use this with. I know there was a lot of the letters where people made comments of they would love to see this turn into a community center or a homeless shelter or something like that. Were any of those conversations that you had along that regard?
Well, I think to become such a public use, we would need some kind of public-private partnership with the city. We'd be happy to have that discussion if the city's interested. We've not been contacted as such or seen any other interest in that sense.
I guess one of my questions is, there was a lot of letters where people said, you should use this for a public-private partnership. Did any of those people that were making those comments come to you and say, this might be a valuable way that we could do that?
Not directly. I mean, we read them, of course, as well in the protests. I would say, you know, I don't mean to do this in any strange way, but you know, Dr. Randy Ice had a few ideas. At the same time, you know, while we were happy to hear those out, I'm not aware of any direct contact or phone calls with those interested parties to us. You know, we had our own number of explorations on that end during our time working towards this application, and it's my opinion that, you know, we've been happy to go down that road, but at this point, with you know, only hearing crickets, we're just not positive that waiting is going to provide us any avenue or answer that's going to be in a positive.
I was just curious if any of those came forward with any, you know, alternatives.
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
So.
I had a question for you. I'm sorry. I did notice, you know, a lot of the same sentiments being shared in the letters. One of them specifically, well, several of them actually, cited that seemingly nothing was done to prevent further deterioration of the site. One of them even quoted you in an email. Don't you love when that happens? You know, going back, stating what you were going to do to prevent further damage, water encroachment, things like that. So I am just curious, you know, I know it wasn't in great shape when your group took possession of it and purchased it, but why was there no seemingly large-scale effort to prevent further damage?
Well, the damage that I think most people point to was done prior to our purchase. You know, I tried to point out in some of our documents that the state of the building on purchase, which I think shows pretty clearly that all of the unprotected areas were already unprotected. Absolutely, we took down some brick on the north facade because it had already crumbled to a point that it was a danger to the community. We were told that unequivocally by inspections. So it wasn't an option for us, and so we did so. In terms of putting up, you know, tarp or like some kind of, you know, covering on the building, the decay that had already been there was going to require significant replacement in the first place. Our goal, you know, I mean, this process of approvals can only move so fast. I think, again, we've demonstrated in our first section that we haven't wasted time. We've been attempting consistently to push this thing forward, but unfortunately, these multiple layers of approvals just take a certain amount of time. And as such, as we have gotten our approvals and then pushed forward with the project only to find that we've hit a dead end on each, you know, option, we've had to come back. And in that time period, at no point did it make sense to us to spend money to attempt to protect the building in what seemed like fairly cosmetic efforts when the underlying issue was more significant and structural. You know, again, this is the condition of the building prior to our purchase. I don't think it's easy for anyone to go in and say that it has significantly deteriorated since we took ownership of it. I'm sorry, that is, I mean, I think that speaks for itself. I'd be happy to litigate that, but I just don't believe there's any, you know, value there personally. I don't think that us putting tarp over this would have saved this structure. The neglect, the demolition by neglect that everyone keeps saying happened prior to our purchase. We did our best. We came here and spent 3 years towards this effort. I still feel in full good faith, and I feel like, you know, I feel like we've been insulted a little bit on those efforts, and it's hard for me not to feel like we're being told we're the bad guy when we did everything we could.
Well,
And I
certainly
do
I
feel
don't
like
think
we
there's
just-
any argument that the building was already in severe disrepair when your group purchased it. Just, you know, wanting to address a pretty common concern in the letters we got from the public being that, you know, seemingly there's a thought that there was not a good faith effort to prevent further damage while things were assessed and while plans were made. So I just wanted to make sure to ask about that.
Sure. The only thing we did, or that I feel like happened, you know, following our purchase was removing the rest of the brick on the north facade. The state of the brick at that time was already so significant that we felt like, you know, doing so, especially where water's not driving directly down into the structure, didn't provide us value. We already knew we were replacing that wall. It's part of our application, so. Again, I'm happy to speak further on that, but that's as
Okay,
far
I
as
mean, somebody may
as
have
far
a
as
more
I see it, yeah.
specific question about it than I did, but I just kind of wanted to lay the groundwork for that conversation and see if there was any clarity we could get there.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay. Who wants to speak first? I'm assuming we have members of the public that wish to speak on this particular item today. We can line up one by one, and then again, please state your name and address for the record at the podium. Thank you.
And because I know, or I anticipate we have a large number of people who want to speak, I'm going to actually use a timer. I don't usually pull that out. And then I know there have been a number of concerns raised about the previous rezoning of the application. What is before the commission today is the demolition of the church. So if people can, I think, focus their comments on the demolition, and not relitigate the rezoning, I think that's going to be helpful for the commission and help us to move the discussion forward.
Sound good?
Zella Gibson, Paseo, and I'm here on behalf of the church. What is confusing to a lot of the neighbors is when this was published on your site, you have the wrong neighborhood. You have it as Mesa, so typo, and we are District 2. And I'm insulted by what he just said by saying that he has tried everything when that's not true. From everything that we have met with, that he lied to us, they've lied to us, and they said that they would. We have documentation of it. I mean, we were there, and as it being a historical church, we would like it to be saved. And my family have been in this neighborhood for over 90 years, so it means a lot. I know a lot of people think it doesn't, but it's a church, and we want it to be saved, and so I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Surely there can't just be one person.
Randy Ice, Heritage Hills. Since my name was mentioned, they told me I had to come up. Okay. You have a letter from us. It's very comprehensive. We also met with all the other historic preservation neighborhoods on Sunday. This is of concern to all the areas. There were 3 demolitions on last month's agenda. Demolition in the historic district is the most serious problem we are facing, because once those buildings are gone, they're gone forever. And we want this taken very seriously before any decision is made on this church. All right? We know it's in bad shape. But quite frankly, they've owned it for several years. I took a tour. I could see sky through the roof. When you buy a piece of property, if you have any intention of trying to save it, you fix the holes in the roof. You do not let water get into your building and undermine the building. They've had this property for over 2 years. They did not fix the roof. They took no remedial action to stop this. I know he says it didn't make any economic sense or whatever. Well, you bought the building, promised these neighbors in Paseo all these things. Surely you toured the building before this happened. Surely you knew the condition of the building. The city provided a SPUD. The neighborhood did not put up an objection because they wanted the building saved. And now the building's going to go away, but the SPUD will still be there. Okay? And so in effect, what we have allowed, which is bad public policy, is an upzoning of property without the neighborhood input because they bought into the fact that the building would be saved. Okay? This is using historic preservation to get what you want. All right? And that's where we have a problem. That's where all the historic neighbors have a problem. The majority of the people in these neighborhoods signed petitions to go under this zoning. We want the code enforced. We want higher levels of oversight by the city and by the commission. And that's where our basic problem is. We just don't think there's been good faith here.
Questions? from the commission?
I mean, I'm still just jumping back to, trying to understand. That was kind of where I landed on preventing further damage is I think that's, nobody is disputing that it was in terrible shape in 2021. And I think this is a really good lesson in addressing that, that this did sit here and get to that point and that nobody did step in until your group tried to buy it. But I am struggling, and I'm not an architect and I'm not an engineer and I'm not a contractor and I don't know the proper procedures to follow for that and I won't pretend to, but I am struggling to understand kind of the lack of effort in preventing further deterioration and keeping, its condition right now what it was in 2021 and taking steps. We can't weigh economics and we can't weigh future uses with regard to some of these letters that have come in asking us, could we see it used as this or that? We just can't weigh those things. And preventing the further damage, while I hear you loud and clear as an individual, that it didn't make economic sense and it was already deteriorating, I think that is kind of the area that I'm struggling to understand. So I guess I don't have a question in there unless anybody else had a question on that, but just still trying to understand exactly why it seemingly steps with development. Yes, absolutely. I know you guys were in here, you were super thorough and taking all of those steps.
Sure. To us, at the time of our approval of the SPUD, we were only approved for multifamily. We knew at that time that because we were going to need to separate up the architecturally defining feature of the sanctuary, that we were not going to be able to accomplish historic tax credits. So we knew we were going to have to totally change the interior of the project in order to create multifamily units. I'll be honest, we didn't, at that point, we no longer cared about the cosmetics of the interior, which were the only things we felt were going to be undermined by allowing the exact type of damage to continue to occur. I think, I really feel like our presentation in the application focuses on what we see as the true underlying issue, which has nothing, honestly, to do with those issues. It has to do with the settlement of the two primary structural elements in the center of the project, and we didn't feel like any of this was going to hurt the fact that it was already a fatal error. So we were more interested in how we solved that question and less interested about throwing a tarp over a hole that had already, that frankly has not changed since we've owned it. I mean, I'm sorry, but the damage was done. The mold was there. The interior does not look a day different than when we purchased it. It still looks terrible.
That's a helpful explanation just to understand, why you guys weren't worried about certain things. So
Sure.
I do appreciate that.
I think, just for my own, so you're aware of my own, I guess, internal thoughts, I really struggle with this particular property. I mean, I know that it's a historic gem that the neighborhoods want saved. I also recognize that there is a economic and capital situation here that's not feasible. I think that the applicant has given us a pretty good faith effort in his attempts from when they first purchased the property to now, and coming back and talking with us and trying to walk through what they were wanting to do and how they were going to do it. I feel like if we don't go ahead and approve the demolition, we're just kicking this can down the road for another month or another commission or whatever the case may be, because I don't think anybody's going to come in and save this property in the state that it's in. So I think it'll sit there, and I think it'll be a threat to public safety for many, many years to come, and eventually it's going to get to the point where it either falls down on its own or it's demolished by somebody. I would be in favor of a demolition at this point so that you can actually bring that property back to life within the neighborhood as well. So that's where I stand today. Hello.
Hi,
Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
yes, Marva Ellard, 1521 North Chartel Avenue. I think there is a procedure in the HP ordinance to consider demolition on a property, and I don't know that the applicant has fulfilled the items of that procedure. I think it requires more analysis of financial viability, not just what somebody's opinion would be. I can tell you that I've talked to the State Historic Preservation Office several times about this project, and it is deemed eligible for tax credits. It's listed on the neighborhood listing. Tax credits can be a difficult process, and Asa and Micah would probably need to talk more with SHPO about what could and couldn't be done, but I can tell you from past personal experiences that you can take exterior walls down and put exterior walls back up. You can do a lot of what would seem drastic actions to keep a building. And so it seems like there's more to this procedure than just what our thoughts might be about the condition of the building. Their own engineer didn't declare it dilapidated or unsafe. I mean, we took a structural engineer in, and ACE's been very accommodating about getting people in the building to see it. I don't think there's ill intent here, but I just think that the ordinance states a process that needs to happen, and I don't think all that process has happened. So that might be something that staff should address. I do think that there were things said in meetings with Jefferson Park and Paseo. I don't want to dwell on this because Katie asked not to, but neighborhoods aren't law firms. They're told things. They have 2 days to review a SPUD when they get it in a packet. That's just not quite an equitable situation for the neighborhoods as opposed to developers who do this much more often. So their comments are probably going to be more emotional and more directed about buildings they've lived with for years, but I do think there's a procedure in place that hasn't totally been followed or hasn't totally been analyzed the way it talks about in the ordinance. So
What do you feel like we're lacking from that? Just if we could kind of be specific about what we think hasn't been.
I don't think the engineering report is strong enough. I also don't think the financial analysis of it has been fulfilled by what is called for in the ordinance. I don't think the commission or the applicant or the neighbors get to decide the viability of it. I am curious about what Ron France said, but I guess maybe we'll get to read that at some point. And so,
Yeah, how would you, I mean, it's so long, is there a way to?
It doesn't look like he has any particular stance on it, per se. He recognizes the challenges and the significance to the community, kind of from both perspectives is how I interpreted it, but it didn't really have his letter didn't seem to have a stance on what he would recommend. But
I can.
Are you able to share
I
any
can,
of these?
yeah, we can, we
We
have
have two
people, we've
extras.
got some extra copies if people want to read it. I'll just briefly summarize. Ron said that he toured the church with Asa and with another resident, that it was a thorough tour, and that it was clear to him that the owners had thoroughly researched and inspected the property over the last 3 years, and that Asa explained the challenges they'd had, that there are significant structural issues due to the original design and continued deterioration, and that the building has been neglected and suffered vandalism, that he has seen worse buildings saved and rehabilitated. A lot of that is based on resources, mainly money, and that time is also a critical factor, mainly due to the impacts of vandalism, that due to the extent of structural issues and continued deterioration, much of the building will have to be deconstructed and rebuilt to code, that the amount of deconstruction that requires removal of historic fabric can trigger challenges for using federal and state historic tax credits, that it seemed that the applicant had explored this option thoroughly, and that without tax credits, the project has financial challenges, that another overlay of challenges would be the limited uses of the buildings, and he goes into the issues that were already discussed with the zoning and what is and is not allowed for the reuse of the space. That he appreciated the the tour and the extent of the research that had already been done. He then discusses the experience of the tour with a longtime resident of the neighborhood who gave a great deal of background on her experience and the community's experience of the various spaces in the church building, how they were used, features that were there over time, memories of the history of the building, and that he believed the owners and architects have tried to do all the right things with plentiful challenges, but that he knows the parishioners and neighbors have incredible ties to the property. You can save a building many times, you can only demolish it once, but I'm also aware that there are limits, and goes on to talk about that this is a great study for kind of what we can do differently and better with other properties in the future, particularly churches, religious spaces, and that he was thinking of another successful project, the rehab of the German Methodist Church at Northwest 8th and Lee Avenue that is now the 8th Street Church, part of the Church of the Nazarene. He said, I send best wishes to those on the Historic Preservation Commission who offer their time and talents. So not a firm stance in one direction or the other, but a thorough telling of his observations of the property.
Is it allowable to share these extra copies?
Sure, and we didn't get this in time to get it up online, but it will be added to the website where all of the other attachments are available.
Asa, could you elaborate on, we kind of have some conflicting opinions on the tax credit situation, and this is a huge vote, so I just want to make sure we're really thorough. I know everybody's busy, but could you elaborate on what has or hasn't been explored?
Yeah, so to be clear, first of all, and I'm, in long conversations with Marva, was very upfront. My initial interest in this project was the new build. We were involved to a certain degree and had an understanding with Micah, the client, that at the point of actual preservation work, that he should, frankly, pass this on to somebody that does this work, more professionally. We're not that firm. I had no interest in being the person up here today or at any point really on the church project. We were just here to try to get those initial approvals and then get to work. I'm not that experienced in state historic preservation approvals or capture. That said, we had those conversations, and our understanding, because we never got to a full application because we were told pretty clearly that with the separation in the multifamily approach made us ineligible. And when we had additional discussions with Katie, came back and discussed, well, is there any opportunity to come back to rezone and get approved for something that would retain that space, like our initial attempts at like a neighborhood coffee shop, whatnot. When we had further discussions, it was our understanding that, and there's a portion of the Park Services guidance on these types of projects that could be eligible, that they're not interested in rebuilding history, they're interested in preserving it. And as I showed in our document prior, I get that our structural assessment is somewhat ambiguous. That's why I had him here last time. Unfortunately, he's not here with us today, or I'd put him on the spot again. But in stating that things can be repaired, my interest here was to show what repair meant. And because the sheathing is original to 1917, because the framing was done in ways that does not pass current code for just base life safety, structural stability issues, we're taking all of those architecturally defining features down all the way to the foundation and then rebuilding them. And in that sense, we are attempting to rebuild history, not preserve it. And so we were told at the time, and again, this is without a full application, but we understood pretty clearly that that wasn't worth the effort. So we didn't go through with it, and so we saw, that's what got us here today. That's what got us to this application, was the fact that we saw there were no opportunities to assist us financially on what is an extremely difficult project already. And without that finance, assistance, we just don't believe it's possible. I mean, I hear a lot of people talk about the church that's very similar, that's down on 8th and Chartel. I don't know the full history of that rebuild, but my understanding was that had something to do with St. Anthony's, a very large entity with a very deep pockets. And Micah's a local guy just trying to do right. I'm concerned that the state of what we've been through has made any kind of redevelopment financially infeasible at this point. I can't speak to that. He would have to, but I mean, the hoops and the jumping and all the issues on this cost money. And so it's only gotten more difficult to figure out what the future is here. So I don't know about the financial, feasibility assessment. We weren't asked to do that at any point. I apologize if that's something we were meant to do and did not do. I don't even know the character of what that would look like. My understanding was that financial feasibility was not strictly something that was reviewed here. It was more about nuts and bolts issues.
That's my understanding too, but Katie, is there something in the ordinance about, kind of checking the box of going through something like applying for the tax credits and?
So there's nothing particular to the historic tax credits. The ordinance gives the commission 3 different criteria to consider under review of a demolition. One is you can approve a demolition if the property is not historic. I think we've already clarified that one. The second is that you can approve demolition of a structure that poses an imminent threat to public health and safety that can be alleviated through no other means than demolition. And that was the criterion that seemed to be the case that this applicant was trying to make. There is a third criteria to show that there is no viable economic use of a property. When that case is made, it triggers an economic review board. The applicant has to provide a lot of financial documents related to the property. That is not one that has been typically used. And we may not have discussed that. If that's something that needs to go forward, that's certainly something we can further explore with the applicant to explain what that looks like. But typically when we're looking at a structure like this, where the primary issue seems to be the physical condition, it's that second consideration that is of concern to the commission. And it has to be one of the 3, not all of them. So often people don't submit any economic, financial information because they're not trying to make that case. Just like we often don't even discuss whether or not a property is historic because that's already assumed and known. So.
Yeah, and to be clear, we do see this as a danger to the community. I think we hinted on it last time, and I even asked if the inspector was here because we've had multiple discussions with him. We've reboarded this thing several times. It continues to get vandalized. We continue to have issues with securing the building without having, paid security out there at this point. We're not sure how to keep people out of it. Since the beginning of the project, since we purchased it, there's a fire pit that somebody brought in there that clearly used it at some point to try to keep warm in this building. And the last thing we want, we don't have insurance. Nobody's going to insure this building. We don't get anything out of this building burning down except, possible dead vagrants that we all get to think about on our conscience. And we're not interested in that. I'm not trying to paint a gruesome scene here for our benefit, but I'm just being frank about our concerns as building owners. I mean, that's our liability, that's our question, and we don't feel like that's an acceptable place to be stuck. Yeah.
So I sympathize very much with Micah and you and all the efforts that you guys have made. And I know very well that financial viability is really the big issue with this. It's hard when you have the public saying, I want to see this, I don't want to see that. They're demanding a use on somebody's private property, but they're also not quite stepping up to the plate to volunteer, hey, I'll purchase this and redevelop it myself, or I'll put money into it. But you also mentioned, Asa, that you aren't the expertise in the expert in historic tax credits and restoring these. So I am also questioning, Marva, this is right up your alley. So is there a way to plug in somebody who does have that financial or that tax credit expertise and really exploring like saving a historic property? How do we get the right people volunteering and stepping up to take that role if this is something that is so important for the community and the neighborhood to preserve?
Yeah, before Marva gets up, because I'd love to also perhaps have her answer. We haven't heard any of the feedback from the structural engineer that we visited the property with Marva, and would love to hear what his thoughts were on it, because we've been in the dark since then.
Just a couple of little, Marva Ellard, 1521 North Chartel. Do you all want to write that down and we don't know?
Exactly.
Okay. The Nazarenes paid for the work on the church. St. Anthony didn't pay for that work because I did some work for the Nazarenes on that church. But I will tell you, it was in better shape than this one is to start with. Tax credits, the building could probably come almost down to the ground and go back up and still be eligible for tax credits.
Without any attached future use or with? My understanding
Asa
was-
is correct that the
Okay.
sanctuary is the dominant element of this church, and that would have to stay. So there would have to be some interaction with Planning Commission and maybe a couple of particular city council people. Mike and I have talked about this, and I've asked if there was a way to partition this lot to sell the church separately from the other part of the land that the project that Asa and Micah have worked on could go forward. We haven't gotten very far because we don't know, and I think there's a possibility we could come to some kind of agreement on what the church parcel is worth.
Well, I love that idea. Why don't y'all just do that and solve this problem for us?
But it's, but like you said, we've got to find a use, we've got to find, I think I know a couple of people who would be interested in helping with the church, but and Asa alluded to this, the time parameters in this process kind of make it difficult sometimes. These are hard projects to put together. I mean, Commissioner Poore does this on a daily basis. They don't happen in 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes they don't happen in 2 or 3 years, but, we would, I think, be willing to explore this on a private basis if Asa and Micah would want to do that. I know that, I don't know how many extensions they have. I don't know if they can move forward with their multifamily that I assume is probably designed and pretty well ready to go or close. Not really.
To speak to that, I mean, I think in our application, we've made certain commitments to the commission that we had no intent in doing anything until we understood the outcome of this application. We're not interested in moving forward with anything without coming back here. We continue to want to show good faith, not only to the commission, but to the neighborhood. We're not big bad developers trying to push something through with some secret motives. So, I stated pretty explicitly in that commitment section that we would be happy to come back for anything, any discussion, any further approval on anything we might do, but we have to know what the future is for the church at this point before we can formulate a game plan. And so that was our approach. So we're not ready to do anything. We put full hold on the multifamily portion. That hasn't been moving forward for quite a while.
Is the owner open to public discussions with regard to future use? If, depending on how this all shakes out, I just would like to know if you guys are basically scrapping what we saw before. You're saying it's not relevant to this if the church can't be saved, or if it can be, but by a different group. Your initial proposal we saw is not relevant. So is the owner open to public discussion for some sort of newly proposed use?
I think like the challenge of that is if the church is going to get demolished, then obviously it probably makes better to have a holistic development plan for the entire site, right? Not just like proceed with just what they currently have and then have to like not have a
You sit
bigger
together?
vision.
Right, no, that's my question, is if we're starting from square, if this prior proposal that we've seen is maybe not going to be relevant, where do you go from there? What's your next move,
Yeah, I haven't got that. My name's
Can you
Mike
state your name and
McGahan.
address for the record, please?
Yeah, Micah McGahan, 708 West Sheridan. I haven't really thought about it, so I think by the time you go through and essentially you're having to take something down, redo it all over again to a space that doesn't format very well, so it's like you're worse off than building something brand new that's better in another location than coming through with something. And also what makes this project really hard is the size, because it's not, like it's easy to spread out these costs and all that, but once you have like a 2,500, 3,000 square foot building, it's, you can't get a lot going on that. So, by the time somebody comes in, goes through all of that, it's like you would been better off using all that money to just get a site somewhere else. Is at least in my mind.
I think, to that point, one of the things that has made this difficult is frankly, it's low square footage. Per pound, right, we have a significant amount of envelope compared to actual leasable space. Any developer knows that, right, that makes numbers difficult. You need economies of scale to make these projects make sense. It's why no church has, since 2002, entertained this project. It's been sitting there. It's been available. I know personally several redevelopers that came and looked at this project. People passed on it for a reason. It's really hard economically to make this project feasible. That's not our argument. We're not trying to come through, with the analysis today, but I mean, it's the reality that's underpinning, the fact that our concerns about the danger of the building and our inability to address it. So it's just, I hear what Marva's saying. I think I've been open and honest with her the whole time. If they want to make an offer, I have no doubt Mike is interested in hearing it. But we haven't heard that. And with our continuances, I believe, exhausted, we're really here just trying to understand, where we stand and what our options are for moving forward. I don't know, what else we can entertain without actually hearing something concrete.
Let me check in with the public real quick. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this particular project? If you just raise your hand. Okay, great. Marva, did you want to talk again?
I've talked to Micah on the phone and asked if he had a price. He's also told me that they didn't have really in these, not that they're alone in this, the wherewithal to move this project forward at this time anyway. And so I don't exactly know what they'd be giving up if they don't have plans to build on it right now, if they could have some time to work through a potential deal either on all the land or on the church. I was a little disheartened listening to Asa and Micah. It's almost like they never wanted the church in the first place. I mean, so seems like all the...
I mean, like he said, it's been sitting there for a long time and it just was sitting there vacant with nobody making any effort for it. So I think like the fact that he at least attempted to step up and try and do due diligence, I mean, it's far more than what had happened before. So, I mean,
kind of
I'm
think they
torn.
stepped up to do something with the site. I don't know about the church. I don't know if the church was the primary focus, and it's not a very big site.
Right.
So I think whatever happens would need to go together. I mean, if there's a way to partition it, I think we could explore that. If not, I don't know, but I do think that we could have some conversations about it and see if we could find some. I know Randy Ice has made calls to other churches who might want an urban location. I mean, we've been trying to do things to see if there are some possibilities for it, but it's not a particularly speedy process.
And I apologize because I missed the November meeting. I did review the minutes and the packet, but if what I don't understand, or I guess the piece that's missing for me, is what exactly changed between the purchase of the property and today that's making this an issue. I would be a little bit more amenable to saying, oh, I understand there's no financial opportunity for restoration if it had been sitting, unowned or basically effectively unowned with a long-term ownership since 2002. Someone bought it 3 years ago. Presumably they were an informed buyer who did due diligence at that point. I must have missed this last month, but if you could catch me up.
Sure. So yeah, we purchased it in 2001. I think my section 1 there, without
2021? You said
sorry,
2021.
2021.
Feels like a lifetime, huh?
And for us, our strategy, just being open and honest about it, was in order to afford the cost to rehabilitate and preserve this project, we felt it was necessary to do the multifamily portion. We felt like getting that at a certain dollar per square foot was going to allow us to be able to do this project and be in the black as an overall effort. So yeah, we did think that other piece was quite important. Thus, we came through first for the rezone of the property that would allow us to do that. In that effort, we initially hoped that this project would get approved, the church itself would get approved for a commercial use, something small and neighborhood related like coffee shop that would allow us an easy path towards historic tax credits. The Ward 2 Planning Commissioner did not agree. We were only approved for multifamily, which hurt our ability to then, move forward in that sense. At the same time, we weren't deterred yet, and we came through with approvals for the church itself. After that, understanding, okay, well, we're going to have to go with multifamily. We need to know how this is going to work and what we're going to get approved for in that effort before, we can start to really understand the numbers associated with that type of effort. We came through, we got our approvals, we were held to certain standards in that, replacing the stained glass, whatnot. We were willing to do that. We happily accepted. At that point, understanding, the specifics of our project, understanding the live loads, the structural needs of what we were going to need to meet, we had our structural assessments done, and it was at that point we began to understand that the issues specific to the building were not cosmetic. These were not just things, being replaced. It was something more critical. The central argument that I try to make in the structural assessment portion of our document is what we understand happened and what, from an initial due diligence period effort looked like to be, kind of the common cosmetic issues of an old building, sagging roof, brick problems, whatnot, were actually symptoms of a more dire and central issue. It was those two main structural elements settling 6 inches or more, which doesn't seem like much, but is very significant on a project like this, pulled the project inwards. I've got entire, exhibits that talk about the hinge of the existing framing. These walls were framed in 1917. They don't include all of the requirements and recommendations that we use today. A lot of people say the whole, like, they don't build them like they used to, but honestly, we have more stringent requirements in this sense today in order to meet life safety, questions. So part of that repair and rehab that is stated in the structural assessment means completely replacing the sheathing, and the sheathing, of course, is what the brick ties to. That means we got to bring the brick down to replace the sheathing. We actually need to reframe those walls because they're not framed using modern dimensional lumber. None of it has a sticker on it that the inspector can go and say, this is going to meet, the requirements of this project, has no lateral bracing. So all of these walls have a, in its DNA, has a critical underlying flaw that has led us to, after, really gaining that understanding, finding our hands empty and not knowing what else to do, leading us back.
In the interest of time, thank you for the specific
Sure.
information. I was kind of looking more about the general timeline issue of essentially, you did more structural engineering after you determined you couldn't use it for commercial use.
Correct.
And that led you down the path of discovering greater deficiencies than you previously had determined.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, this is a difficult one because I understand respecting the preservation. I have a little bit of problem with not appreciating the amount of money and time that you've spent to look into it. Obviously, when you bought it, you had one goal in mind. You can't tell the condition of the property until you get in there and invest that money and time, which I think you and Micah did. I have always had a little problem on these because people want to hold a property because it's historic, which I agree with. But then when those people that are protesting doing anything with the property, nobody will come forward to do anything. We've had that on several different properties around Oklahoma City, and people have purchased those and they're now stuck with them. And they're losing money. And my fear is that people aren't going to make the investment to come to these properties to try to save them or do anything with them because of the fear of they're going to be stuck with these properties and holding them and nobody's going to allow anything to be done. In this instance, I know this property very well. I live down the street, and I've dealt with the vagrants and I've dealt with the people around it. And I think, unfortunately, I think you guys, this is not a property that can be saved. I think you did do due diligence. And I think if there was somebody that could make it viable and do it, they would have already stepped up. But it wasn't until this petition for demolition came up that everybody brought all these options of what could be done if somebody would just do it. And that's my concern, is that those people don't ever step up until it's demolition time.
Which, Katie, that's maybe a little off topic, but we're going to continue to have these dialogues about these properties that are in disrepair, that need saving. Has there been any exploration of creating an incentive tool with the City of Oklahoma City to help invest in these or provide low interest loans or other things? Because it's going to be a continuous cycle, and until we help find a solution, you're going to have upset neighbors and you're going to have property owners that can't find a viable solution.
So we are talking about Preserve OKC, the preservation plan that was adopted a couple of years ago. One entire section of that plan talks about incentivizing historic preservation, talks about a number of different financial incentives that the city could implement, and we are looking at some of those. I mean, that's all months and years down the road for those to be available. But yes, it is something that we've talked about internally in the planning department and with other city staff that, Oklahoma City has been very effective at using financial incentives for lots and lots of things, and we have not focused that on historic properties, even though sometimes they happen to have pulled in historic properties. But I think there is a real need to have incentives, local City of Oklahoma City incentives specifically for historic properties.
So I would make that a request of all the neighbors here, is to also show up for that advocacy, to be able to create tools that help us be able to preserve these buildings that are so dear to everybody's heart long term. So, and I would say that as a commission, that's something that we should prioritize trying to explore and seeing if there's a solution we can provide. That's just a side conversation. It's not going to help for today, but if this is going to continue to be a topic, it should be a priority.
Well, and the city's enforcement of the dilapidated properties, these properties get in the ruins and the city doesn't push forward with making requirements for those corrections. And that's why we run into a lot of problems with now it's a dilapidated problem.
So I would love to say one last thing in regards to Commissioner Gaines' comments. It's been the major difficulty for us in this effort that, like I said, this venue is not my place. I don't try to come here because HP is not what I do. That said, the nature of this one's led me here. And what I can definitely tell you is that I have no interest for sure in ever being back. And I feel like the difficulty here for anybody, because I know we did a good faith effort.
No offense.
And I know that my client did as well. And I really, really like Marva. I mean, we've gotten very close to working together on projects in the past. The last thing I want to do is stub my toe and not be on her list for possible projects in the future. But I can tell you that going through this effort and feeling like people don't accept that you've done your best, or don't feel like you're here in good faith, that you've tried in real material ways to save a project, spent real money, real time, real effort, and then come and say things about you or your effort and beat you up over and over again in ways that is, yeah, I have no interest in ever attempting saving a project. I'm sorry. This is not acceptable to me as just an applicant or an architect. I won't be here again. I promise you that. And
I
so,
very much respect your honesty in stating that this is not your normal arena. And just kind of after hearing a lot of conversation, I just kind of wanted to, I feel like my opinion has gone back and forth about 25 times, and I find myself in the very odd position of agreeing with every person in this room. You know, for me, I do think that we are probably kicking the proverbial can down the road if we do not approve this. But you know, a lot of attention has been drawn to this property in the past few months. And to several people's points, up until now, nobody has stepped up other than you guys to try to do something with it. My sincere hope is that after this, that would change. You know, if we saw somebody else come in and buy this and come back with a demo request a year from now, I would feel really differently. But I do care very deeply about preservation, and I feel that the nature of it makes it incumbent to save that which at all possible can be saved if it is a part of the fabric of the neighborhood in which it exists, and this is. So while I agree with everything you've said, and I really do, I mean it when I say that I respect your honesty and your directness, and I think you've done a tremendous amount of research, my hope is that one of these people who feels very strongly about this project is given the opportunity to come back with a solution. And so I would really like to see a denial of the demo, but maybe without prejudice, so that, you know, this can be brought back if there's no other solution found.
I would love to hear a motion.
Well, is there, I think we need to,
Oh.
I
Do we
think we
have
need to see if anybody
does
else
anybody
wants to
wish-
speak.
okay. We asked earlier, nobody said yes, but come on up.
Hi, Stuart Hudson, 825 Northwest 15th Street. My first time here, and I don't know if I have the facility with the regulations that you all might, but it sounds like, if I have heard correctly to date, that there are 3 opportunities for demolition, or 3 grounds under which you consider such a request. First one sounds like it's off the table. Second one sounds like if under proof that it is a danger to its community and surroundings. I don't know what the criteria for that are. I haven't heard that in detail yet. It sounds like the third option, where it's not financially viable, is not the option that the applicant was selecting for this purpose. So under the single option that's left, and it sounds like the option the applicant has taken, I'd be interested to hear what the criteria are to determine what is a safe building, how we determine whether something is a danger to the community, and then whether those criteria have been satisfied under the regulations. So,
Are we able to pull that information? I don't know that I know that off the top of my head.
I have Muni code pulled up. So demolition or removal of a historic structure constitutes an irreplaceable loss to the quality and character of the city. Therefore, a certificate of appropriateness for demolition of any structure, including houses, garage, or other accessory buildings, shall only be granted if one of the following occurs. We talked about that we determined that it's not historic, does not contribute to the historic integrity of a district, that as evaluated by the commission based upon information including but not limited to reports, photographs, or inspection as part of a site visit, the structure is in a state of decay or ruin and poses an imminent threat to public health and safety, and the demolition of said structure is required to alleviate said threat. That's the one about structural condition. And then C, there is no viable economic use of the structure. For the purpose of this paragraph, the term no viable economic use shall mean: 1, the structure is incapable of earning a reasonable economic return. 2, the structure cannot reasonably be adapted for any other use which would result in a reasonable economic return. 3, the owner, using due diligence, has been unable to find a developer, financier, purchaser, or tenant that would enable the owner to realize a reasonable economic return. And then if you keep scrolling down, Economic Review Board, for demolitions based upon no viable economic use of the property, the applicant shall be referred immediately to the Economic Review Board, which shall consist of 3 independent experts appointed by the city manager. They shall be knowledgeable in the economics of real estate, renovation, and redevelopment. This is a very long paragraph, but essentially they'll have 60 days to hold a public hearing, review submitted documentation, which may include appraisals, profit and loss statements, itemized expenses, listing of property for sale, current fair market value, et cetera, which is why we typically don't even put that criterion before you all, because most people don't want to go through that process.
So it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, that imminent threat is the key factor
That would
here.
seem to be the most applicable in this case.
And how does, in these conversations, since I'm new to this process, how is imminent threat determined by the commission? Has that been something that's come before?
That there is, well, we sometimes have a structural engineer's report that specifically states that the property presents an imminent threat to public health and safety. That carries a lot of weight, and then
Yep.
the commission also just evaluates based upon their own knowledge, experience, documentation provided of the property.
And I think from what I've heard, that has not been presented to this point.
So that's for the commission to decide.
I heard earlier that there was an imminent threat and that there's vagrants that go in there, they can't keep them out. They have a fire pit in the middle of the building as well, and the concern is
Sure.
dead people on their hands.
And it's been an engineer's report stating that it's an imminent threat. Was that the criteria?
I don't know, it wasn't an engineer's.
That's
There
what's
is an
been
engineer's
used in the
report.
past.
The engineer did not say it was, I don't believe specifically stated that it was an imminent threat.
So for the purposes maybe of crossing Ts and dotting Is, that's a necessary step in order to, would be a necessary step in order to approve that.
Potentially.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump in and say that I'm in agreement with Commissioner Jordan in that I've wavered back and forth depending on who's up at the stands.
You're all very convincing.
But what you just recommended is something that I had come to conclusion of too, and I would be for, if you want to make a motion for that, I would support it.
It is possible,
Yes.
but we do have some more conversation.
Asa Highsmith, 435 Northwest 23rd, Suite 214. For one quick comment on that, again, we'd be bowled over to hear somebody come up and give us a good, option for saving this building. I will tell you, and this is just coming from the conversations I've had with tours and the emails and phone calls since last meeting, that what we've been told, not by everybody here, but by more than one of the protesters, that we need to be ready to accept a large financial loss on any sale. And I personally don't find that as an acceptable option or answer to the issue here. So if we're being denied to spend more time having those conversations, I just want to state that I don't find that to be an acceptable answer, and I don't think you should either. I think if somebody wants to come and talk about how we make this economically feasible for everybody involved, then I think that's acceptable to do to my client. But I don't think saying that we should stop, have a denial, and then have discussions about how we should accept losses on a sale, I don't find that to be okay.
Well, and that's totally for you and your client to decide. But to be clear, a denial without prejudice allows you to bring this back at any point you please, because as you stated, you just love being back here. So you can bring this through a few more times. But I do think that there has been a lot of attention drawn to this building, and I would sincerely hope that the people in here protesting and sending in the letters do take this as a real opportunity to try to find a solution rather than continue to kick the can.
And my only problem with that motion is that it does just kick it down the road. And I find it interesting that our first meeting, I think at the first meeting we had, there wasn't anybody from Paseo here protesting it. The second meeting that we came back, we had one person from Paseo that made a comment at all. And at this meeting, we had some emails that were forwarded to us from Paseo. But in the first couple from Paseo, I mean, I know a lot of people in Paseo that would like something to happen to this, whether it's demolished or not. But the first two meetings, there was nobody from Paseo. We have a lot of people that are objecting to demolishing this, but they're not from Paseo. I respect that it's historic preservation, but I think for this community, Paseo community, it is a concern, and it is a health and safety concern, aside from just being a huge eyesore. So I think kicking it down with your motion, I don't think that is productive and does anything, and I would like to see a motion to accept the demolition.
Katie, did anyone from Paseo write in advocating for the demolition of the building?
To be honest, I did not track which neighborhoods, which comments came from.
Did we get
But
any?
did anybody
didn't see
advocate for
We didn't-
demolishing
Oh,
the
for
building?
demolishing, I'm sorry,
Yes.
no, we did not
So
receive.
nobody
any
from
comments.
Paseo
Sorry.
wrote in stating that they really want to see this gone?
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Which is not
hopeful.
there
I
as
see
far as
Marva
I'm-
back there talking to Micah. I'm hopeful there's some
I,
efforts
5
being
minutes.
made, but yeah.
Guys, we've got to move on to
Yep.
the next couple of items, so we need to entertain a motion at some point. We've heard from the audience, I believe. There are more people that, okay.
Well, on that Paseo, no, neighbor.
Ma'am, can you state your name and
My
address for the record, please?
apologies for not coming sooner, but I had a sick parent dying, as did someone else. So this wasn't on my mirror, but it is now. I mean, and like Dr. Ice said, I mean, anything that gets demolished, it's gone. And that's why this committee was started in the first place, is to protect everything that our ancestors built. And this is Paseo. I mean, if anyone that's been to Paseo, there's lovely architecture there. So I'm hopeful for what is happening in the rear as well, and hopefully to continue and find a solution amongst everything as well.
Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Zella Gibson, 925 Northwest 25th.
Thank you. Come on up.
last comment for me, by the way, and then I'm done. I'm going to sit down. I'm sorely sad that Commissioner Ramey's not here today. I think those who were at the last commission heard from him, who live literally a block away. And I think if you remember his comments, he was here in full support at that time, as not just a neighbor commissioner who does see this project as an imminent threat.
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Oksana Deryuk, 701 Northwest 14th Street. I do not reside in Paseo, but I do reside in Heritage Hills. And honestly, over the past hour and 13 minutes, we have heard a lot about this building, and a lot of facts were presented. But over the past 45 minutes, we're just discussing the feelings, how everybody feels about it. So can we please stay on focus and just discuss really what is happening and what needs to be done? Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Tammy Donnell, 601 Northwest 27th. I'm sorry, I live in Paseo, and I did not know of this demolition till I was on a walk one day, and an architect friend told me about the proposed demolition. So there's really not great communication within our neighborhood. So,
Sure.
And my neighbor also said he wasn't aware of it. So it was just kind of lack of communication of not knowing this. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And I also think that the precedent set by this does make it extremely relevant to anyone living throughout the city and in other historic neighborhoods. And while the unique character of the Paseo, with more rentals and more commercial buildings than a lot of the owner-occupied historic neighborhoods, not that there's not owner occupants in the Paseo, but that there is a different mix than a lot of the other areas, might mean that less people specifically in that area would turn up specifically either for or against. But I think that it is such an important issue. I'm in Crown Heights, which obviously the Egg Church was in Edgemere and not historically protected, as we all know. But I do think that if residents of the Crown Heights area magically had a time machine where there was a 1-month actual ticking clock to find the amount of millions of dollars that are not necessarily going to pay off economically, they're more of a goodwill contribution. I'm not saying anybody could have come up with it, but there's people that might have made a swing at it. And I, for one, would love to see an opportunity for this to happen here, not an infinite timeline, but something to say, at least in this area where we're setting such a strong precedent, no, guys, we're really serious this time. You have X amount of time to come up with a plan. And I'm sensitive to what Mr. Highsmith said about being told that they would have to accept a loss. And I would say that I don't think that, it would need to be a good faith offer. And and that we wouldn't hold them to being forced to accept a loss in any way. But on the other hand, perhaps there doesn't need to be too much of a profit attached to it either if they're given the opportunity to get out of it. Not that we have any ability to control that, but I like the idea of there being an actual ticking clock on at least one of these that gives people the opportunity to say, not just can I say I went to this church as a child and I loved it, but I know someone with 10, 15 million dollars that really wants a community center here. Because we have to be able to say, those people are few and far between. It's something we talk about every time, and nobody's come up with it yet, but I'd be pro giving them a chance to find it.
I guess.
This kind of, we're ready for this. I mean, we're all speaking the same language, I think. Well, the
So
three
I'll
of
throw a
us
motion
are.
out and we'll see if it sticks. I will make a motion to deny without prejudice HPCA 2300115.
Moved by Commissioner Ford. We have a second.
I will second.
Is that
Second
with
by Commissioner Jordan.
findings in the staff report?
Can we find that we're not going to do it again?
Just to clarify, with the findings in the staff report, Cassie?
Sure.
You want to be sure and add some extra so that it's a part of the record, if there is extra that you have.
If what?
You two were talking about the approach that you want and what you suggest about the motion, so you want to make sure that's included in the
Are those
motion.
things that we can attach to a motion? I mean, just,
You can attach whatever you like.
I mean,
mine's
I'm-
pretty subjective. I don't know that I can
No,
attach.
Not like a laundry list, but a general point of why it is you're saying.
I'm hopeful that this dialogue today has sparked a lot of interest in this room and that other people are willing to step up to the plate. But knowing that it's easier to, say words and not follow through, I can recognize that they may be back for a demolition permit. And at that time, I would highly consider it. I don't know if that's a finding or not, but
I second that motion still.
Yes, if we could include, I don't know if we can include in their language that would this come before the commission again, it would be likely to be approved.
I don't think we can
Can we
because
not?
commission
No.
members change.
Okay.
So.
And no, you can't predict a future vote.
Okay, let's all vote in prime gov. Okay. The denial without prejudice passes by a vote of 3-2. We'll move on to the next one, which would be HPCA 2300121 at 133 Northwest 16th Street.
This is in Heritage Hills East, Ward 6.
We will welcome.
Consideration and possible action on application by Isaac Cornell for certificate of appropriateness to, 1, replace all windows, elective. This was heard by the commission previously, and the applicant was not able to be present. It was continued at that time, and we have received no further information at this time. We have recommended another continuance.
Okay, and just for the record, Commissioner Whitley is back on the horseshoe. Do we need to do, we don't need to do a roll call or anything, do we? Okay, perfect. Okay, let's see, is the applicant present?
If the applicant is not present, I would motion to continue it again.
I second.
Moved by Commissioner Jordan, second by Commissioner Gaines. Please vote in prime gov.
Is specified to the January meeting?
Or we could do February, and hopefully they have time to actually respond.
Okay, February is fine with me.
All right.
We reach out to the applicant and tell him that we've been continuing it, waiting to
We've
hear some
done that.
opinions and
Yep.
information.
Yep, we always follow up with them,
Okay.
especially when they're not here, to let them know what happened.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 4, HPCA 2300132 at 2801 North Hudson.
This is in Jefferson Park, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Fish Cop LLC for certificate of appropriateness to, 1, construct duplex, elective, 2, construct garage, elective, 3, install driveway, elective, 4, install stairs and retaining walls, elective, 5, install mechanical equipment, elective, 6, install sidewalk and stairs, elective, and 7, install fence, elective. This is a property for which the commission recently reviewed a rezoning application, a SPUD, to allow for the construction of a second duplex on a lot in Jefferson Park in an area where there happened to be a number of lots with 2 duplexes on them. It's kind of not a typical condition, but it's typical in that particular location. The commission did recommend approval of that SPUD, and it has since been approved by City Council. This application generally is consistent with the SPUD as was approved. Staff did recommend a continuance due to a couple of just concerns with the overall design of it, if the bulk and mass of the proposed duplex could be reduced to be more compatible with the existing historic structure. There is a proposed 1-car, 2-story garage that has a proportion and massing that seemed not typical of, not compatible with the surrounding character of the area. We also don't have documentation to support a two-story garage in this location. And then all materials appear to meet applicable guidelines, except that the proposed windows were not a window product that the guidelines support. I think that generally summarizes all the issues.
Is the applicant present?
Good afternoon. Klaus Ryman Phillip, 2801 North Hudson, which is actually the front duplex unit. And yeah, pretty much just a continuation of that SPUD. And actually, I think the site plan, I don't think it's changed much from that, the exhibit that was provided for the SPUD application. And yeah, we just tried to really design another duplex that, is compatible with the neighborhood, reflected well with the existing duplex. There are some unique conditions on the site, specifically if you, some of the views, including the packet, you can kind of see the site is on a berm. It's kind of up on almost like, it's about 3.5 feet elevated from the sidewalk. So, we didn't really want to regrade the whole site. That would have changed the character of the property, and the existing duplex sits up on that berm as well. So I think maybe some of the concerns about the mass or the scale can be attributed to the fact that it is sitting about 3.5 feet higher, but that's simply because the whole site is higher. Probably, I think if you look at the four corners of the intersection, I think honestly a two-story structure could have been, appropriate, especially, if you take out what's there on the corner right now with the existing duplex. But we wanted it to be contextual to the existing duplex and the site, so we kept it as pretty much a one-story building with a built-out attic. The roof shape, the facade, those are really informed by the existing duplex. If you look at the front, the way those porches are, we kind of, tried to reflect the character of that duplex and this one as well. So, yeah, that's kind of basic intro, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Regarding the windows, I'll just touch on the windows real quick. We would like to do fiberglass windows because really, in our opinion, that's a superior product. It's not, I think, vinyl has a bad name for a good reason, I think. It really isn't very aesthetically pleasing. It's a cheaper product, and fiberglass is a lot more durable product. It's finished a lot nicer. Vinyl windows, you have like, seams in the corners, things like that. Fiberglass windows are really a far superior product. And we could have gone with a aluminum clad wood, but we specifically don't want to do that because it still has a wood core. So it's almost in some ways maybe worse than wood because you can't see if there's rot happening behind the cladding. You wouldn't know it. It could separate from the cladding. And the actual finish on the fiberglass windows is a powder coated finish, which is virtually identical to the aluminum clad windows anyway. So it's like, you wouldn't be able to tell from the outside, that it's aluminum clad wood or fiberglass. So anyway, that was our thinking on the fiberglass. We just wanted a product that would be hopefully virtually maintenance free, for as long as possible.
Okay.
Well, I think the design of it's cute as can be. I know there's some questions about materials and the windows. One thing, I do feel like the garage is kind of not common in these areas. The garage was the only thing that raised a big red flag to me, other than getting answers to staff about some of these material questions and making some tweaks there.
Yeah, the garage is kind of a product of the site slope again, a little bit, because we don't want to go up the slope necessarily. We kind of liked having the drive, really just like you see it there. You kind of pull in. Really, we're not going to use that same drive, but use that same grading. As a matter of fact, it'd be difficult to fill that back in, and then like do a drive that jumps up. So we wanted to keep that same grading for the entry and for the drive. But then because of the grading, because it would be kind of cut into the site, if that makes sense, once you walk up those steps to the back courtyard there, you know, that roof eave would be like, I mean, you could just climb on the roof pretty much. So it's kind of like, you know, from the site grade, it's like a normal high garage, basically. From grade, from the sidewalk, maybe it seems a little bit tall, but we kind of felt in relation to the proposed duplex, it still feels very secondary. It's quite a bit shorter than the house, you know.
What's the justification for the second story?
In the garage. It's really just, so initially we were like, we have this extra space, so let's use it for something. But we're probably
Have
going
an
to use it for.
HP justification?
HP
Like a
justification?
guidelines justification?
I'm not sure.
I do think it would be, because of the grade change, I do think it would look like miniature if it were only
Yeah.
a single like story to the height of the scale of the new proposed duplex.
You'd have this tiny
Like,
little thing.
it would look
and
kind
then-
of strange
yeah.
to me. Like, to me, looking at the scale doesn't, I know that's not a historic, you know, reason, but it doesn't look out of scale to me just because of the height of the grade of the property.
Well, the unique circumstance might be that it's below the grade of the
There you
property
go.
and therefore.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
Right.
for that.
Second
Taylor.
story.
Yeah, that doesn't bother me either. Like my garage sits like 3.5 feet below the finished floor of my house just because of the grading there in Shepherd Hills. So it doesn't bother me, especially if it's keeping what's historically there.
Katie,
as grading.
what about, like all the other things that are, I mean, you've got 22 findings. So what exactly does, you know, if everybody's fine with the garage, I mean, I don't know that everyone is, but if everybody is, what does staff still need from the applicant?
Get to where they're all listed together.
Very thorough staff report.
It was. Yeah, like I said, we tried to keep it, I mean, it's basically one-story structure. You know, it's up on a hill, like a little bit, so if there's any
there's some stuff
concern
about
with
the
scale, I mean, across the street on the south is an aplex, a two-story aplex that takes up the whole site. And then, you know, really that whole corner, it's interesting because every property on the corner is essentially this configuration, you know, except this one was like missing the back half of that, so.
So, you know, numerous findings are just related to that it meets these guidelines, aligns with this requirement, aligns with that requirement. Some were kind of general references to staff's concern about design. If the commission's comfortable with the design, then those, there's nothing else we need on that. It was just calling that to the commission's attention. We would need either the commission to support with a unique circumstance, a window material that the guidelines don't support, or to ask the applicant to agree to propose or to submit to staff a window that meets the guidelines. Then the garage ones, the roof. We needed some additional dimensions on the site plan. I think the driveway was not dimensioned.
I don't know enough about those type of windows to really speak to that, so I would not necessarily feel comfortable motioning to move forward with those without further discussion with staff.
Would your client be amenable to just going with something that does fit the guidelines in place of the windows?
You know, in the interest of moving it forward and being able to, you know, get financing, and I wonder if we could prove it with, you know, an approvable window type, and maybe there's a clause, or, you know, maybe we can come back and say, here's a, you know, like a physical example of it, or, I don't know.
So I
more
think
information.
I would be open to that.
Yep. So we can approve it with the condition that the applicant submit windows that meet the guidelines to staff for inclusion in the CA, and then at any point in time, you can come back with a revision, and just as you can with any type of application. And if you, in the future, decide, I really do want to go for these other windows, I'm going to propose a revision to my CA, we could bring that back to the commission.
That sounds good. I think that's fair. It sounds like that wouldn't be approvable today. Fiberglass doesn't sound
Yeah,
like there's enough information.
I don't think you're going to go buy the windows tomorrow, so
Right.
that gives you some
No,
time to
yeah.
figure that out. And
Okay, perfect.
Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak?
I have one real quick question
Oh,
while the
yes.
members of the public want to come if they do. Katie, number 17 on the staff report, the new concrete should match existing concrete with an aged appearance. I feel like we've had a dialogue about this, and you actually said that it's better to just let the concrete age because it looks off when you try to match it.
Yeah, so we have been telling applicants that we do not advise putting any sort of a dye in the concrete. We've been advising applicants that some of the methods people have used in the past where they dye the concrete and it's rosemary or it's desert sand or some type of color, that those don't age well. They typically don't actually match the historic concrete. There are a number of different methods that people use to get an aged appearance. We also see that sometimes by the time that year is out from when the CA was approved, new concrete is starting to blend right in with the older concrete. So we've kind of continued to include reference to that guideline about the aged appearance of the concrete, but we don't stipulate a particular method that needs to happen. And sometimes that method is simply letting it age.
Yeah,
So
sorry,
it's
thanks for
in
bringing that
that
up. I
eventually.
missed that completely.
Yes.
So with regard to a motion, I mean, is there anything we need to reference about the driveway since seemingly the opinion is kind of in conflict with the way it's written?
No, I don't think there's any other condition that needs to be put in there.
Actually, we were missing some dimensions on the driveway.
Oh, yes, on that one,
Oh,
yes.
yeah, I'll be happy to add
yeah.
that too.
So I would motion to approve items 1 through 7 of HPCA 23-00132 with the specific findings and conditions already noted in the staff report, as well as the, I guess, do I need an agreed upon condition that he is going to come back with the agreed upon condition that the applicant is going to come back to staff with with windows appropriate to the guidelines, and with the unique circumstance that with regard to the garage, that the grading creates a scenario in which a taller than allowed for garage is most appropriate.
And driveway dimensions.
Oh,
Those are specific.
that's in the specific findings.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Jordan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Poore.
Before as we're voting, do we need to ask for public comment? We didn't receive.
We did,
I
didn't
did.
we?
Nobody's
Okay,
stood up or
okay.
raised their hand. Okay, that passes unanimously.
All right, appreciate
Thank you.
it.
We'll move on to item number 6, HPCA 23-00137 at 108 Northwest 15th Street.
This is in Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Rachel Massey, NDN Organizing LP for Oksana Dajuk, QWAK Real Estate LLC for Certificate of Appropriateness 2. I'm not going to read all the items, but this is to rehab and renovate a multifamily structure in Heritage Hills East. This is a case that was before the commission previously with a different applicant and was approved similarly to what's proposed now. Some things have changed with condition that those conditions were never subsequently met because the property was changing hands, so that CA was never actually issued and I believe has already expired at this point. New property owner has come back with a new application. Staff has recommended approval of all items except for the lighting, which is something that staff can work through with the applicant. It's an administratively approvable item with some conditions, most notably related to the replacement of the windows. We have good documentation of windows from when they were still in the building. Windows at this time are no longer in the building. Some of them clearly are beyond repair. Some of them it is not clear to staff that they are beyond repair. The applicant has proposed to replace all windows. So.
Okay. Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Oksana Didiuk, 701 Northwest 14th Street, Oklahoma City.
Great. Talk to us about the windows.
So essentially, all of these windows are beyond repair. We have tried to work with Home Rescue to see if we can repair them. I actually had my staff working on the windows for about a month, trying to scrape off and see if we can repair them with epoxy. Unfortunately, they are neither aesthetically pleasing, nor they are acceptable in terms of having the appropriate shield from heat or wind or rain. So therefore, the building continued to be reconstructed inside and no windows at this point. I would love to have fiberglass windows. I did not know that that is a possibility, and I was told that it is not. So therefore, we have on staff, we were able to recruit a person that can reconstruct all of the windows exactly the same way they look right now, so you won't be able to tell the difference, with the exception of probably not the same wood, but they will look the same and they will be wood windows. And we really are pressed for time because a lot of work has been done inside, and if we don't secure any shield from the rain and wind over the winter, that a lot will deteriorate.
I'll just clarify, the guidelines don't support fiberglass windows. That applicant proposed that. I mean, you can propose anything
Sure,
under the sun
I
that
would
you
love
want.
that if I
So, yeah,
can, but you know, we're willing to put the wood windows and basically restore the look that we have right now. I mean, honestly, just having this as a commercial building, it would be very difficult to find renters who would be willing to pay high utility bills because the windows are not not providing appropriate shield. And honestly, the ones that are off the ground, I cannot find a person that can put them back in.
Okay. So it sounds like staff's recommended approval on everything if the windows are going to be replaced with wooden windows and the lighting can be administratively approved. Do we have any other questions? Any members of the public wish to speak on this particular item? Yes, sir. Dr. Ice, if you could state your name and address for the record, that'd be great, please.
Randy Ice, 119 Northwest 19th Street, representing Heritage Hills. You have our comments on this. This came up in October of last year. At that time, a number of similar proposals were approved, with the exception of the windows. The windows were specifically excluded at that time because there was some evidence that a good portion of them, as staff has indicated, were salvageable. This is one block south of the apartment building that you dealt with all year long, and you told the man you ripped out the windows without permission, and you have to go back in with the same kind of windows. This seems to me to be a very similar case. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, all right? And you know, we're holding people to the standards in the code that says you preserve the windows. These are simple wooden windows. They can be made by any carpenter. The ropes can be fixed. They can be made operational. If you want energy efficiency, you put storm windows down. That's what we do across the historic district. The applicant lives in the historic district. She knows the rules. She knows she shouldn't have ripped out the windows without permission.
Hold on. Let's one at a time,
Okay, whoever took the windows out knew the rules. There's a marker on the corner that says the property is in the historic district. There's no dispute for that, all right? And so we would like the code enforced. We want the original windows repaired and put back in. In some instances, there may be situations where windows have to be changed. We could deal with that on a case-by-case, window-by-window basis. But we preserve the external wooden windows in the district. That's a critical part of the ordinance.
Sure. Ma'am?
With all due respect, sir, unless you can provide the evidence that I ripped off some windows, I did not, then I would like to see that. No windows were ripped off. They're exactly the way they are when I purchased the building. I cannot repair them. If you can repair them, please do so. The building has been vacant for 20 years. And last winter, the building was in danger of fire. 3 fires were put out since I was an owner.
Thank you.
But please provide any evidence that I removed a single window since I have been an owner.
So going forward, let's address the commission and not each other. But we will go ahead. Do we have any other questions that we need to ask?
I mean, not unless Katie has clarity about any of that, if it's relevant to, you know, when the windows came out and by whom and whether they can be put back.
So the applicant has provided an itemized list of every window in the building. It's on attachment 1, page 28 and 29. So numerous windows are gone, removed from the opening. Others have been removed and the openings bricked in, presumably some time ago. Some of them say window in place, good to fair condition, good to fair condition. I think staff's concern, as it always is with these, is that applicants tend to want to do a wholesale window replacement, which makes sense. It's understandable. You're doing a large project. You want to just start fresh with all of them. But what our ordinance and our guidelines tell us we're supposed to do is to save every window that can feasibly be saved. So where there are windows that are salvageable, the guidelines would tell us that those need to be restored and put back in place.
So I'm reading this first condition, that all windows must have been determined by the commission to be 50% or more deteriorated beyond repair based on evidence illustrated and described. That's not a condition that can be granted by staff after this meeting, because it states that it must be determined by the commission. So how would we move forward if we were, seeking further info? We couldn't, the way I'm reading this is we could not do a conditional approval.
So I think there are a number of different options. One would be that in this meeting right now, in the review that you've done prior to now of the packet, in what you're seeing in the documentation that's submitted in front of you now, you all make the assessment that the windows are collectively 50% or more beyond repair and can be replaced.
Collectively, like
you say, yes, we agree every single window in this building warrants replacement, and we're going to approve that. I think you could also defer with specific guidance to staff and to the applicant to further determine which windows are salvageable. Perhaps those could be something that comes back to the commission if we ultimately decide that that's not doable, but at least they could, move forward with ones that do warrant replacement, like where there is no window left in building.
So the 50% is on a window by window determination,
Yes.
and not that there's 90 windows in here and 45 of them are deteriorated beyond, and so therefore they can replace them. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it would appear based off this list here that the ones that are in good to fair condition should be able to be preserved. I mean, if you're listing that they're in good to fair condition, then surely they're not deteriorated beyond 50%.
I wouldn't think so. Are the windows still available? Are they around? I mean, it sounds like they were gone.
The upstairs windows, some of them are intact. Unfortunately, what determines repairable or not repairable? All of the glass has to be repaired. So all of the glass will have to be replaced. So therefore, what percentage of the window does that entail? But again, there's a lot of draft through the windows. We won't be able to provide the appropriate amount of shield from the outside weather. Like this, the tenants will have high utility bills. I will not be able to advertise this property that's been completely renovated with utility bills of $300 for AC a month. This is not a feasible project.
I think back to that first case we were discussing, I mean, we just can't weigh the feasibility. I mean, that was something to be weighed before you purchased or determined the use, but this commission can't weigh the financial feasibility of the windows.
I don't ask you to weigh the financial feasibility. I just ask you to consider the fact that these windows are deteriorated. And all I'm trying to do is replace them, which they will look exactly the same. I am not trying to demolish the building here. I'm merely trying to restore it.
And I think Dr.
So I'm
Ice,
proposing restoration.
Dr. Ice mentioned that you can put on storm windows, which would help with that, additional,
Will he allow me to be the owner of this building and do what I see fit, or will he continue to provide the suggestions and not provide the financial support behind his suggestions?
I will make the recommendation that you are allowed to put on storm windows with approval. That is an option to provide the sustainability of the window that you
Thank you. And just like your previous applicant, honestly, I don't enjoy being in front of this meeting and having another application for the storm windows. It is not as pleasant as you folks may believe it is.
Well, certainly,
so we all are trying to do the right thing.
Wherever everybody's welcome to buy properties wherever they choose, but upon buying one in an HP district, changes do require people to come to this board. So I think we have enough information to make a motion if everybody's comfortable with that.
Thank you.
I'm comfortable with it.
All right. So I think that my personal opinion is that the windows need to be continued and come back to staff. And if you would like to take that opportunity to revise your application to reflect storm windows, that's a great opportunity to do so. So let me just make sure that I have the right items here.
Did you say come back
For the windows?
To staff or to
Sorry,
commission?
to the.
Exactly am I coming back for? So you had the pictures of all 64 windows, and you had the opportunity to review them. So can you please tell me which ones I can replace?
The ones, I think the ones that are located in this report that says that they are in good working condition, and the ones that say they're not in good working condition.
So whichever those windows are, if you allow me to start replacing them, I would like to take you on that opportunity.
Do we have enough information from you in regards to what windows you're going to be replacing them with?
So we have some information on the proposed windows. They are working with someone who's going to build the windows, so we don't have our typical Pella, Marvin, Colby, whatever cut sheet, but we will continue to work with the applicant to get that specific documentation, and I think staff's comfortable with that as a condition.
I think everything else in there that's noted with good condition needs to be repaired and put back up.
So, and also, did we need to address lighting, Katie?
Yes.
We get a little,
So that, we recommended continuance on that. That's something that we should be able to work through at the staff level for an administrative approval.
so that could be approved with condition, with an agreed upon
I would
condition to
just
work with you all? Or continue the lighting?
Yeah, either way is probably
So with regard to the windows, I'm still not fully understanding exactly how we should make this motion. My opinion is,
So I would say that you could approve replacement of the windows where noted in the application as having been removed from the opening, or approve replacement of the windows with a condition that those noted in the submittal as in good to fair condition be restored,
okay.
be retained and restored.
Which windows will be those? So tomorrow, which windows can I
Well,
replace? and
you're
which
the one who noted them in the,
It's all, yeah, all of them are
I
noted on.
find them greater than 60% deteriorated, so clearly we disagree on that.
Oh, let's make a motion. and
well,
let-
then I'll just continue all the windows, honestly, if that's the easiest thing, if we need.
I don't think that's the right thing to do. You had all of the information.
Ma'am, we're trying to help you out here, telling you which ones need to be replaced and which ones don't need to be replaced.
I honestly think
commission-
all of them need to be replaced.
That's not for you to decide, that's for the commission to decide.
Okay.
So we're going to let the commissioner make a motion, we're going to vote on it, and we're going to agree with whatever that is, whatever the outcome is.
With regard to HPCA 23-00137, I would motion that items 3 and items 3, 7, 1, 3, and 7 be continued to the January Historic Preservation meeting with the specific findings noted in the staff report.
Moved by Commissioner Jordan, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gaines, please vote in PrimeGov. Okay,
Okay, with regard to,
the continued,
Oh.
I'm sorry.
I vote yes on that one. I didn't vote.
So with regard to the same submission, HPCA 23-00137, I vote to approve items 2, 8, 9, and 10 with the specific findings and conditions noted in the staff report.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Jordan, second by Commissioner Gaines. Please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, those items were approved with conditions. The first were continued to the next, or which meeting do we continue? that to?
January.
January meeting. Okay. Are we missing one?
No, I included 4 in the, was that the infill?
Yes, it's the.
I included that in the first, in the continuance.
1, 3, 4, and so.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see, moving on to item number 7, HPCA 23-00139 at 517 Northwest 27th Street. Is the applicant present?
This is in Paseo, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Anthony Peralta, WH Construction, for John Linhart for a certificate of appropriateness to 1 replace window required. This is the first time this application has been before the commission. This is one of our probably smallest homes in Paseo. The applicant, not understanding that this needed to go through a review process, replaced a non-historic window in a bathroom shower with a window that does not meet the guidelines for window replacement in a historic structure. So they have submitted this application retroactively and are, proposing the work that has already been done. It is a vinyl window located on the side of the house in what is a bathroom. And staff has recommended continuance just based on the fact that the window doesn't meet the guidelines.
Sure. Can you say your name and address for the record, please?
I'm John Linhart. The address in question is 517 Northwest 27th. My wife and I are the owners. I'm from Tulsa, just drove down from Tulsa, my wife and I, and I can say one thing for sure, an old Tulsa man sure learned a lot by coming to this meeting.
You picked a great one to come to, huh?
I tell you what, but that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that, and
We have one of these in Tulsa if you want to go.
I'll pass if that's okay. There was one thing I would like to do that no one else so far that I've heard has done, is thank you all for doing what you do, taking the time, thanking the staff for your help in this project. Did you all, and I don't mean to ask this question to being a smart aleck, but did you all read my document that I presented? And I know you all have a lot of reading. I don't know if, did you all?
Yes, sir. We did.
And so based on the fact that you have read it, I won't spend really any time other than to say, I asked you to just walk down the road of practicality with me, because as a person who bought this house from an investment company, I suppose, that had been renting it out for a long, long time by the shape that it was in when we bought it, we got a big dose of practicality when we took this project on. And and the picture was included, when I saw the picture of the rock surrounding the bathroom window in question, I don't know, I had a lot of thoughts as far as that goes. And going out and buying a wood window was not the first one that came to mind. And so I apologize for that, because obviously I should have known more, should have thought about it a little deeper, a little more thoroughly, et cetera. But with all that said, really just asking for your all's consideration to, I guess, approve a certificate of appropriateness based on the actions that we've taken.
My main question is just with the home of this site. Well, first of all, was the shower always where it currently is?
Yes, ma'am. We've made no interior changes.
So there was a wood window in the shower historically?
There was a metal window, the picture that I included in my packet. And I guess, again, when I walked in and saw it, and about fell over, the thought of that being a historical window did not come to the top of my mind.
So it's a historic window opening, correct? It was
It's where
likely
we-
probably a bathtub instead of a shower is my guess.
The size of it, the location of it, I would assume it's always been a bathroom window. I don't know what the configuration would have been inside the bathroom. And I would assume it would have been a wood window like all the other windows in the surrounding area on a building of this size. What they replaced was clearly not a historic window.
Well, I would certainly never expect anybody to have a wood window in their shower. I don't want a wood window in my shower. I wish there were a very lovely alternative for that situation, but I think we're probably faced here with the decision of, hey, would we have been more comfortable with them proposing boarding up this window and pretending it never existed, or allowing for a different material? So I would be in favor of giving it a unique circumstance just based on the fact that a wood window is not extremely practical, not practical at all in this situation.
I tend to agree with Commissioner Jordan as well. I mean, there's going to be water intrusion to that thing from now until the end of time. He's going to have to replace it a gazillion times from now until the end of eternity. I think practically speaking, just like you mentioned earlier, a vinyl or the vinyl or fiberglass that you have in place makes sense. And it's sort of towards the rear of the house.
I mean, it is on the side. I would have less, interest in approving this if these buyers had intentionally, thought it was really cool to put a window in their shower and done this themselves. But the goal of historic preservation, in my opinion, is not to make sure that, we're preserving structures, not deteriorating them. And I certainly don't want to cause harm to the home by having water encroaching into this wood window and down the siding all of the time.
In just a practical sense, I appreciate that. the house is in a lot better shape now than it was, I mean, in every respect. So anyway, thank you.
Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak on this particular item? Name and address for the record too, please.
Marva Ellard, 1521 North Chartel. This is not in any way, we've had this situation, if it's really a shower, you can install a glass pane over the window and tile to it and still have the original window from the outside and glass on the inside with tiles. So I don't know the interior condition, but I just wanted you to know that there are ways that you can deal with this and still keep the wood window.
Sure.
I'm in agreement. I struggle with this because there are showers with historic windows. I mean, it exists in a lot of places. So I don't think it matches. I don't think it fits in the integrity of it. I can't vote for it, but you're welcome to make a motion.
I'm in agreement with you, Cassie, as well. I've had a house with a window in the shower before. There are ways of caulking and sealing wood windows to prevent rot. I don't personally love the idea of putting a glass pane in front of it because if I have a window, I want to be able to use it. But there are ways of dealing with wood windows and keeping them sealed. So I struggle a little bit too. On the one hand, it's on the side. It's already in. It is a historic opening, but it wasn't a historic window to begin with. But as an architect, I know that there are ways of preventing water intrusion.
Katie, I'm just curious, was this, did the applicant come to get approval, or was this a turned in, or I'm just curious on how this came to us. Do you know?
I mean, I can answer that in that I drove up to the house and there was I have this,
Little note.
accusation. It's not just a little note. It's an accusation of accusal of doing something wrong. I'm 67 years old. I don't know that I've really ever been accused of doing something wrong.
But was it from the city?
Yeah, it was from the city. I have, you can see it. And so that's another thing about this. And I probably should just that down, but a person, I'll back that up, and I appreciate you even mentioning that because it really kind of is important how stressed I was and how difficult I found the situation when it was brought to my attention. And of course, we were in the process of doing something that we'd never done, which was renovating this house, et cetera. But the process, and Angela was very helpful in doing what she could do to get me through this to the meeting today. I don't know, I go get chemo every other Tuesday afternoon, and in the middle of this, my blood pressure was 175 over 136, and they wouldn't do chemo at that time. And the nurse asked me, I know the nurses, I've been doing it for 3 years, and, John, what's wrong? Is something going on? I said, well, boil it down to just being accused of this, trying to figure the process out. I'm not familiar with the process. Like, nobody wants to come back. Obviously, I'm not the only one that doesn't want to come back. Nobody does. But I don't know. But I found that almost, I wasn't even going to bring it up, but after a couple comments were made, I thought I might, just for the sake to say, I made that decision in an absolute vein of thinking I was doing the right thing, economizing our expenses on what we were undertaking with redoing the house, and not taking 27th Street down a notch by the way that window looks. And so with that, I rest my case, I guess. Thank you all.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak on this particular property? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Well,
again, I don't know exactly how everybody feels about it, but if we're looking for a motion, I'm happy to make one. To approve item 1 of HPCA 23-00139 with the unique circumstance that a wood window is not desirable in a shower and could cause, further water damage and rot to the window and the surroundings.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Jordan. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Excellent. Second by Commissioner McBride. All in favor, please vote in PrimeGov. Or if you're not in favor, vote in PrimeGov either way. Okay, that passed by a vote of 3-2. Thank you. All right.
I thought it was tied at first, and I
I
was
did too.
very confused.
Moving on to item number.
Oh, wait. Oh, wait.
Oh, now we got a 3-3. Okay.
What
So what do we do
happens
with the?
now?
Oh, wait, there's 6 of us, it's 3-3.
You have to have a majority in order to, yes.
I don't think we've ever had a motion fail before.
So the motion fails for lack of a majority. So you have to discuss it some more, vote again, or you can discuss it and vote again.
Yeah, someone can make another motion.
Okay.
Or you either
I'll make an amended motion.
You can do that, and then that can be discussed, and you can decide which way. You had an even number, so somebody's got to switch sides.
Okay, well, I'll try a new motion and see if I can gain some support for it. Regarding HPCA 23-00139, I motion to approve with the previously noted unique circumstance, but with the agreed upon condition that the applicant continues to meet with staff to determine a historically appropriate solution for this window opening.
Find an appropriate replacement?
Solution.
I think that staff and the applicant would need to know what that means.
Well, replacement wouldn't be, I think there's a lot of things we could reconsider. Again, we've seen people come in and ask to cover window openings entirely for bathrooms. That's not a solution I'd be in favor of, but it's a solution, and it's not just a different type of window. So I think if they can get to a place staff would feel comfortable approving,
I feel like all of the things that, they would either have to be historically appropriate for the window that staff can approve, or it would have to come back to us regardless. I think they can only approve things that are like.
Right, it's just not really up to us to determine what he wants to resubmit, so.
Well, I wouldn't be in favor of him covering the window
But
and
that
like
was
removing that, so that, I feel like that would need to come back to us.
There was a suggestion made about the inside-outside part.
Yeah, I think all of those options, the applicant would need to agree to pursue those alternatives before we made a motion approving that.
But if you as staff didn't agree upon it, it would have to come back here anyway, right? So all this is really granting him is the opportunity to try to find a solution with you guys, and if he doesn't, he's right back here.
Yeah, I just don't know that the applicant, what staff would find appropriate that would meet the well, not what we would find appropriate. What staff would be comfortable approving as part of a conditional approval would be a window that meets the guidelines. And then if he needs to do something on the interior to keep that protected from the water, that's interior, and we don't really even review that. What I'm not sure about is if that's something that the applicant has any desire to pursue.
Could I ask a pertinent question at this point in the conversation? Is the fact that the current window, is it the view of the window that is the problem in how you all look at it? And I asked the question because I did take some action last week, but I read that I can't present anything to you all until the next time. But I painted, right now, as you look at that picture, it's a real white border around the window. Yeah, like you can see it in that picture. I narrowed that down. So if you'll go back to the picture that shows the front windows, it's it's like 2 inches white instead of 4 inches white. So I did that just to try to become a logical, problem-solving member of the committee to make it look, as you drive by, to make it look more like the rest of the windows. And to that, only the windows in front are original. As you look at that picture, the window to the right of that very picture is a metal window. A metal window. God, and aren't metal windows the worst? Yeah, they are. Not as good as what I put in.
The main challenge is the materials used. You know, we like to have certain materials. That's the main challenge. You know, wood versus vinyl, or.
I understand the premise of the way, and I'm using that Oklahoma slang a little bit, not disrespectfully, but you all as a committee and staff people look at this process as it's historic. Oh heavens, it has to be wood. Or it's historic, it has to da-da-da-da. Well, I guess I just don't buy that personally. And I did what I could do, even by last week painting it to make it look less obvious than it does in that picture. Anyway, all right.
Thank you. Does anybody want to switch sides on this one?
Or offer up another motion with other findings. The other option is we continue it to January, and hopefully we have an odd number of commission members present to break the ties.
Today, if at all possible, but if we can't, we can't.
Is it a circumstance that the 2 windows next to it aren't historic either?
None of those windows
obviously,
on that
those
wall are.
weren't put in.
It is for me. I mean, he's not made a problem worse. Like, that's where I'm coming to with this. He has not made a problem worse. He has not, taken this, perfectly preserved historic structure and ripped out a perfectly wonderful wood window next to a bunch of other perfect wood windows and put in something inferior. He has in no world made this problem worse.
Also, the placement, while it's not in the rear of the property, it's not on the front facade, and this is one of the smallest houses in the Paseo, and it's one of the smallest windows that we're gonna see in months. I know that we're here to, enforce the guidelines, to the best of our ability, but I strongly would feel like this would be one that could get some, special circumstances based on size, placement.
There are not historic original windows on this facade, and I'm really struggling with making this a big problem and, then being like, and okay, since you've not touched the 2 next to it, it's fine.
Yeah.
If I make a motion, it's gonna be the same one again, so maybe I shouldn't be the.
So I would like to make sure that if in fact you do phrase a unique circumstance, that it is accurate. So there are in fact non-historic windows located on the east facade, but they are located at the north end of the building. We do have what we presume to be historic windows on the southern end of the east facade.
Can we see a photo of those?
Of the non-historic windows?
The historic ones, or the front, this front corner?
Is that them right there?
It's the southern corner of the east facade here.
Do we have any
We
close-up photos of
move
those?
back, we have non-historic windows at the northern corner.
Which is
That's
the
to
back.
the right in this picture.
Yes, that's to the right in the picture. So we have the new vinyl window with tinted glass. We have what we believe to be historic wood windows, on one of the smallest houses that we normally see. It is less than 900 square feet. There is no other location to install a bathroom on this structure without a total interior remodel. And the window currently exists within the shower of the bathroom. This window is a replacement window for a non-historic window and a presumed historic opening.
These are the facts
Thank
as we know them.
Do we have any documentation that it is a historic opening?
We do not have any documentation that it is a historic opening. It is a very consistent application of window structure for a house of this size.
But no documentation.
No
So we
actual
are just
documentation.
presuming that it's a historic opening.
Sounds like a unique circumstance.
It does
to
sound
me.
like it's a unique circumstance.
I also struggle with the tint, like the fact that it's tinted, which is, I don't think something we would ever approve.
Is that something that is not allowable on a new, like say we approved a new window, I mean,
Not
it's
that
on,
dark, there's a limit on the tint we're allowed, it's only.
Is that a treatment on the window, or is that the actual glass itself?
The window.
I mean, it is in a shower.
Yeah, but I'd be okay with the treatment again, inside, interior, but I don't think it's appropriate to allow somebody to have a tinted window. Even if we were to allow the non-historic replacement, I would struggle with that.
Yeah, for me, like, I'm sympathetic that, you know, he didn't know, but that's not an argument we typically accept.
it's not, you're absolutely right. I
You
just.
bought a house in a historic district, and there are rules.
No, you're absolutely right. I don't honestly haven't even heard that as part of the conversation though, other than him bringing it to our attention. I mean, for me, that's not why I would say that I would be in favor of moving it forward. I just think that he's not done harm where there was not harm already done. He ripped out no significant original architectural details to change this window. He took it from one type of non-historic window to a different type of non-historic window.
And I understand that, but I think there have been numerous cases that have come before us, and we have demanded that they put in what is historically appropriate. And I mean, you can make the unique circumstance that, you know, it's in a shower. I don't find that to be appropriate. But again, I would be happy to make a motion for continuance, and the next time we have more commissioners, or perhaps I'm not here, perhaps it passes.
I think almost that's where we have to go. I hate that the applicant would potentially have to come down from Tulsa.
Or I would
again.
make a motion that if he wants to, you know, install an appropriate window, then he can work with Katie and that can be approved. So,
I think the only way for us to break the deadlock is probably go to a continuance and hope that there's an odd number next time around.
okay, I will.
What's
Well,
the-
just, I mean, if the applicant is willing to continue working with staff and consider replacing the replacement window, then you can certainly make a motion to approve with that condition. But it seems, doesn't,
Is the applicant aware that he has the right to appeal the decision of the commission?
so that's true also. If the commission denies your application, you can appeal the denial to the Board of Adjustment. There is an additional fee for that. It's another process, but that is an option as well, so.
Alternatively, I mean, right.
Can you come to the podium,
Julie.
please? Yep.
But
Name
yes,
and
ma'am.
address for the record. then.
So,
And you don't have to come back to apply for this. You do not have to be here in person. It's typically very advantageous for somebody to be here, but we've heard you and we know you don't live here and you do not have to be present.
Though it may be hard to sell it to the other commissioners without them
but
being
my,
present. but-
my position is almost, okay, if I was a teacher and I needed my class to negotiate a settlement before they could go home, I would stand in front of my class and I would say, no, this ain't gonna work. We're gonna get this done today. We're gonna settle this, figure this out today, which would mean, the way I'm looking at it, and I appreciate the conversation about we can take it to this other entity to get talked about. I'd just as soon have y'all just say, hey, you know what, Mr. and Mrs. Lenhart, just replace your frickin' window with the wood window and let's just get on down the road.
Okay.
I mean, that's how you make me feel, talking about a window that's the size.
Have you seen though what the window looks like when it's
they
wood?
did.
Okay.
The size of that on the house, it blows my mind.
And I take I work full-time, I support.
Can you please
my
state your name
husband
and address for the
my family,
record?
And I will take another vacation day in January.
Name and address for the record, please.
So that's strong.
I'm out of here. Thank you all.
What was your name?
I didn't hear any of that. Well,
State
yeah,
your name and address.
Okay, Julie Linhart.
thank you.
I will make a motion for HPCA 2300139 for the applicant to work with staff to find an appropriate approved window per the guidelines.
Second.
And that's a condition of approval?
Yes, right.
Moved by Commissioner Ford. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Whitley. Please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that one was approved with conditions. Thank you. We will move on to item number 8, HPCA 2300144 at 809 Northwest 41st Street. Do we need a break? Do we need a break? Okay.
That's fine. Okay, sure.
Let's take a we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and we'll be back here at 4:23.
So close.
No, 4:22. think we're ready to go.
Just say that you're converting more to, just indicate
Okay.
after the recess.
Okay, we are back from recess and quorum is present. Do we need to do a roll call? No.
No.
Okay, excellent. We'll move on to item number 8, HPCA 23-00144, 809 Northwest 41st Street.
This is in Crown Heights, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Randy Wonder, Barcosi Construction Incorporated, for Greg Eichner for certificate of appropriateness 2. And we have an error on the agenda. You've got demolished garage, demolished guest house. Those are actually not up for consideration. And then item 3, construct garage, item 4, construct cabana. And I'll clarify briefly, this is a property that went through a very kind of rare process for us. As you can see, a very significant tree fell on the garage, and the chief building inspector determined that it was, in this case, an actual imminent threat, and an emergency demolition was ordered. In the rare instances when that happens, they bypass our process, and they can immediately get a demolition permit. Not to give anybody any ideas.
No, all you got to do is ask for an act of God. You know?
Yeah, wait for your giant tree to fall on your building. So we do not need to review or take any action on demolition of the structure. We are only reviewing the proposed new buildings.
Let's strike those from the.
Yep, so we'll strike those from the agenda. And then on the new structure, materials generally met applicable guidelines. The design does approximate many characteristics of the previously existing garage and guest quarters. Staff's concerns were that it is, as proposed, is larger than what the guidelines would support and larger than what was there previously. It also appears that it may be a 1.5 or 2-story structure. That was not entirely clear to staff as we were reviewing the proposal. And then just there are some general kind of design details kind of going along with the height of the structure that were not typical for a garage of this type. So we did recommend continuance. And I should clarify, we have these listed as 2 separate items. It really is one building. They are attached to each other, the garage and the cabana. So.
Okay, lots to discuss. Talk to us about your garage that you're rebuilding.
First, and my priority here is to get a garage built, so I'm exceedingly flexible on any issues that the staff has, so.
We've scared him to death today.
And to clarify, I think I originally intended it to be 1.5 stories. I think that's a size that I had heard from somebody who just built 1.5 stories on my street, that was acceptable to the commission. So it's not a 2-story, it's 1.5 stories, just so we can have some storage above the garage, because these homes obviously have lack of storage. And I think the increased size was only 2% more than what it was before, I think, from reading the staff report. So I don't know, I saw the specific findings. There was a brick sill at the floor line. The architect put that in there. I think it was to prohibit water intrusion. If that's a problem, we can eliminate it, because I don't care about it. But if it's, you tell me what the problems are and I'll help you eliminate the problems.
Love that.
I don't see a whole lot of problems.
And windows, I don't need any windows in the garage if that's a problem. I want windows in the guest house part, but we didn't have windows in the garage originally. The architect put windows in, I think, because he thought we needed natural light. It's a detached garage. The light comes on when I go in and it turns off when I go out. So if we would rather have a light, like a security light in front of the garage instead of a window. But you tell me what's acceptable, and I'm glad to work with staff. But the main priority is to pour the slab before winter prohibits it, so we can hopefully get a garage before winter.
I just have a couple of real basic questions. I mean, I would love to see double doors on the garage, just because that's what we, 2 openings rather than 1. That's what we love to see up here. The footprint, I'm not really concerned about. You've hardly increased the lot coverage, and we see that same footprint exist all over Mesta Park and Heritage Hills with an efficiency quarters attached to the garage. That's the way I'm really looking at it from that end. I mean, in my opinion, if you can reduce the height on this thing.
To 1.5 stories?
Katie, how much would he actually need to reduce the height to? I forget the rule about the slope of the roof line and the height.
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure because we didn't have, I don't think we had dimensions on the, oh, yeah, we do. It's the,
Total height was 15 foot 6 inches. And I believe it
Total
was, yes, I believe it was stated in the scope of work, but it wasn't listed on the elevation drawings.
What is typical site or
I thought it was to do with the slope of the roof relevant to the height.
yeah,
no?
so the 1.5 story has to do with the height of the wall from basically the ceiling to where the wall meets the roof, like where the floor of the half story, the distance from the floor of the half story to where it meets the ceiling, and that can be no more than 3 feet. And it was just not clear from what we had what those dimensions were, if it was taller than what that would allow, where that floor really was within the structure.
I mean, it's looking to me like the actual structure, not really the roof, like not the gable, it's the structure that's taller than we would normally expect to see, correct?
If the structure is 15 feet, that's not dramatically taller than a typical one-story garage, depending on the pitch of the roof.
And again, I believe it was only mentioned, called out one place. It wasn't on the elevation drawing, so there was
So part of the issue is
confusion.
just getting more accurate dimensions on the elevations of how tall everything was.
But when I'm saying structure, I'm meaning, everything beneath the floor of the attic space or whatever we want to call it. I mean, does that not seem, there's an awful lot of space between the roof line and the
Yes,
top of that garage door?
that was part of staff's concern, is that
Okay.
it seemed like almost a full story between where the garage door ends and then when you get to the eave line.
That's the only.
It was only intended to be a story and a half. I'm not an architect. I don't know what the drawing reflected, but if that's, we will make sure that it's the proper height. Again, I was just trying to do what Brian Davis, I think, down the street did, and he said story and a half, so that's what I told the architect. So I don't know if the height got misrepresented or if it wasn't properly reflected on the drawing.
I mean, I feel like we're close enough that staff could work on some of those things. You're so open to changes, it seems like this could be worked out.
I mean, you said the windows were not typical for the garage. What's typical for a garage window?
I actually kind of agree, who knows? But I mean, it sounds like you're very open to making the changes they would like to see. So Katie, do you think that this is something that could be worked out with staff?
I think staff would be happy to work with the applicant. We just would want to make sure we had clear direction from the commission on what changes you wanted to see made, or what items you see here that you are comfortable with.
Before we go any further, is there anybody that wishes to speak on this particular project besides the applicant? Excellent, okay.
And I'll just note on the size that the historic quarters was 252 square feet, proposed is 345. The garage was 342 square feet, and the proposed is 467. So it's about, now I lost my math, but it's, the combination of the two, each one got bigger. So that's where the structure is larger.
Yeah, I think since we had to rebuild it, I was hoping that I didn't have to open my door and slide out, that I could have a little more space on the side. So I think it maybe got a slightly wider.
I think we've heard quite a bit. Do we want to entertain a motion?
I mean, does anybody have concerns over the size?
No, I mean, it's still under the maximum lot coverage, right?
With regard to lot coverage, yes, but just not with that 5% of the space rule.
Yeah, I mean.
Lot coverage wasn't known. That was one of the items that we brought up in the staff report.
But it's only been increased by 2%, correct?
Yes, that was what I could calculate, that the square foot difference between what was there and what they're proposing would be about 2% of the lot.
But it's still under the maximum coverage.
I don't know what the rest of the lot
They don't
coverage
have
for
the
the
Oh, okay, sorry,
side is.
misunderstood.
It's got to be close.
I believe it was done within the city guidelines, but That's what the architect said.
Okay, just give me 1 second while I make these notes.
I think 2% is still pretty small, and we make concessions all the time to allow for, modern-sized vehicles. He's not doing anything egregious, adding like a full apartment that wasn't there before, adding a full second story that wasn't there before, so I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm a little, sorry, I keep losing my mic.
It's on this shoulder.
Yeah,
this
oh my
time.
gosh, see, what would the specific request be in a motion regarding the height, Katie? Just that it's deemed appropriate by staff and approvable?
I think to work with staff to confirm that the garage does not exceed the definition of a 1.5-story garage.
Okay.
Does not exceed 1.5 stories? Is that what you said?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Well, then I would motion to approve items 1 and 2 of HPCA 23-0.
Sorry, item 3 and 4.
Oh, I am sorry. Items 3 and 4 of HPCA 23-00144 with the specific findings noted in the staff report and the agreed upon conditions that the brick sill is removed, that 2 door openings are present rather than 1, and that window placement, appropriate window placement be determined by staff, and that the height does not exceed the definition of a 1.5-story garage per the guidelines. And a more detailed site plan.
Yep, Can we go back? On the two, so we had one garage door, and we've had that for 20 years. Are you saying we have to, like, now put in 2 doors? I mean,
Oh, that's a good question, Katie.
Yeah,
because I know the
if it's
doors that
been-
look like 2 doors, I mean, that would be a significant change from what we've had since we bought the house.
I'm fine with the single garage door if that's what was there before.
I tend to agree, but
We have approved single doors in the past,
In
particularly
Crown
when
Heights,
they're,
for sure.
I think, kind of tucked behind the house where the door is not
I mean, I
a
agree that
prominent
2 doors
feature.
looks better, but we've had one, and that's,
let's strike that condition if that was what was historically present.
Right, do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Jordan, second by Commissioner Whitley. Please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that, your project is approved with conditions, it passed unanimously.
and just to be clear, so I'm working with staff on which items?
We want to see the brick sill removed.
Right.
And we want you to work with staff on your site plan documentation,
Okay,
on your appropriate window placement, and on ensuring that the height does not exceed the allowable limit for a 1.5-story garage per the guidelines.
perfect, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our last item under cases for individual consideration, number 9, HPCA 23-00148 at 827 Northwest 17th Street.
This is in Mesta Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Taylor Volk, Clovor LLC for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace 2-story accessory structure, elective. The commission has seen this property a number of times for various items, and the applicant has submitted a new application for similar work to what the commission has seen in the past, but a kind of scaled down scope of work with much more thorough documentation, I would say, of both the existing conditions and the proposed project. What is proposed is the removal of what's essentially the removal of the previously existing accessory building indicated on Sanborn maps to have been an auto house or a garage, and replacement with a new 2-story accessory structure. The new structure, I will note, is not a garage. The applicant has described it as office and other accessory function. The staff report does recommend a continuance with a number of items noted. Let me just get down to where all of that is so I can reference it accurately for you all. One is just simply to ensure that the anticipated use of the structure is consistent with the municipal code and historic preservation regulation and guidelines. We don't typically see a 2-story accessory building that is anything other than a garage. Further justification for the replacement / demolition of the historic structure, revisions to the design to reduce or minimize the increased height and massing from the current proposal in order to be more consistent with the historic structure that's being replaced. Perhaps relocating proposed entrances away from the street-facing facade, incorporating window-to-wall ratios and other characteristics of the existing structure. And that also includes the historic roof form with north and south-facing dormers. So the applicant's here to present their project.
Okay. Name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Commission. Taylor Volk, 827 Northwest 17th Street. Thank you very much for the introduction, Katie. I'm here today to discuss this second structure here. A couple things that I've noted and had discussion with Katie. Katie and I and my mom, who's present here, had a sit-down meeting discussing this building. A couple changes that we had made since the last meeting had a lot to do with the before structure had to be specific, and we made the changes and made a very clear before picture and by dimension. Additionally, we discussed the diagonal wall. Prior to, we had it at the similar slope to the pitch of the roof. With Katie's advice, we changed it to a shed roof, which is more flat and would be in better line with recommendations with staff. So we made those changes to our garage, or I should say the building. And I was going to say is the other item, looking at the historic use of the building, could not find any record of it being used as a garage, and the prior building didn't show a frame that would be necessary to have garage doors. However, in that picture there would be a good example if there was a one-story garage present that was approved for demolition on this site. It had 3 buildings. One more thing, upon discovery of the historic use of the site, one thing is the address to this particular building is 1818 North Francis, according to the keeper of addresses at Oklahoma City. Historically, that's what we found. I don't know when that happened. That's something I wanted to note on the historic use of that building. The height of the building is in line with the same height of the other secondary structures of like kind, all the way down the alley. If you take note of several of those buildings, all of them, with the exception of one is a garage. The others appear to be secondary structures that don't have garage doors. Don't know what their use is, but it's the intent is to build a building of similar type, height, and it also would like to add the pitch of the roof of similar nature, same degree of pitch. It's height, degree of the pitch of the roof. The historic use of that diagonal wall, we discovered that original building, it was built in 1906, this house, and the second structure was built in 1906 as well. At some point, about a decade after that, it was added on, had that diagonal wall. It would be just over 100 years of use, being that diagonal wall that's following the alleyway. In my new design, it would allow the diagonal wall to extend up to the second floor to be in line to have a better, proper shed roof on the structure and protect it better. The prior building had so many flaws that it was falling over. It was a hazard. There was a lot of water coming in, and there was a lot of water damage. And those are a couple of details that also would like to note on the application. We had a discussion if we talk about the repair or if we talk about a new building. Those are the kind of topics I'd like to discuss if you'd like. If we at any point can discuss a couple key details of this project so that I can get some advice to make any changes as necessary. If we can discuss the height, is it adequate with recommendations to staff? The pitch of the roof, is it adequate? If at all possible, even if there's a lot of details like, placement of windows. You want more windows, you want the doors different places, locations. If at all possible, if you agree to the height and the pitch of the roof and the size of the site, which is exact same site size, if at all possible, put a roof on before winter. If that would be obtainable at today's meeting, and I could make any additional changes. I'd also like to say that I'd be happy to make any changes at all with staff. I know we talked prior applications had some minor changes to make, such as the material type for the windows or siding. I can happily make those changes with staff if deemed necessary. I'd be more than willing and happy to make changes to the number of window count, the siding type, location of many items. If that were to be something that you deem necessary, we can certainly have that discussion. I had a really good example picture that I put with my application. It fits very closely to what the design concept is, and it's a real picture of a second building about a block away from my site. And there's other buildings that are similar to it with the door facing towards the street on a corner lot. And I think that's a great concept to add to my application if we can consider that door location to meet other similar corner lots.
Katie, my main question is kind of the same as I had last month. Is there any justification, any historical justification whatsoever to put a 2-story duplex in the backyard of the structure?
So there is, what was there before was a 2-story accessory building. So they have, and they are surrounded by 2-story accessory buildings.
I'm not offended by the 2-story garage, but I know that there are several abutting, but.
Yeah, so a 2-story structure is justified and would be consistent with the guidelines. Anything that constitutes a dwelling is not permitted according to municipal code. So what we are shown right now is the first floor shows office and a bathroom. I don't believe we have a second floor plan.
It's the same.
We
Doesn't feel like an office.
There are 2 offices that are the same?
It's the same as far as the use for the floors. Is that the thing that you said you didn't have was?
Yes, yeah. And the stairs are exterior, so, okay, that makes sense.
I just can't see any reason to approve.
Yeah, so the first
this
floor is an office.
situation.
The second floor has the exact same floor plan, but it's not an office?
It's the same floor plan. It's the same floor plan on the first and second floor. Due to the structure holding there's a, yeah, there you go. There's a wall that's holding up the structure. It goes from the first floor to the second floor.
So we're showing 3 offices, or sorry, 4 offices in this dwelling, this structure, this whatever. So what we're proposing is in theory 4 offices.
Which
4
feels
bedrooms.
like a commercial product at that point.
It's either a commercial product or it's 4 rentable rooms. But I'm just not understanding what else it could be and how to justify anything else.
Katie, you said you can't have a dwelling.
Right.
Where the dwelling is defined as sink.
Got to have a stove.
So a dwelling is going to be self-sufficient living quarters that has places to sleep, eat, bathe, et cetera. So yeah, typically the tip-off for building permit process is if there's a kitchen, but they look at all of the interior space. I will say that we have often approved a variety of structures, additions to houses, new garages, where the floor plan was blank. And when that goes through for a building permit, if they make changes to that floor plan, or even a floor plan that's not blank, that once they go through to, let's say, build their addition, they move walls around on the inside, they make the bathroom bigger, they make the kitchen smaller, that doesn't trigger anything for us because our CA is specific to the exterior of the building and we're not concerned about the interior. However, there are requirements for what is and is not allowed for use of a building. So,
Well, up to this point, one of the big complaints about this project is that none of the work has been permitted. So, I mean, I feel like that's incumbent upon us to do more due diligence to make sure we know exactly what's going on here.
My name is Pamela Volk. I am I'm Taylor's mom, and I'm speaking regarding this property too. I just wanted to mention that we did have a licensed contractor here, and because the meeting ran so long, he had to leave.
But we can
So-
pull permits online.
Yeah, he could have spoke to all of this, the structure, the design, all of those things are something that a licensed contractor was prepared to speak on. So I just wanted to mention that for you guys. It's also important to note with this structure, there are a lot of like structures in the neighborhood. Right across the alley, people that have spoke against the structure also have similar structures.
Do they have similar structures, or do they have two-story garages?
Similar structures.
So who has a two-story accessory structure that is not a garage and has two exterior points of access? That is not a zoned multifamily? I mean, I don't want to talk about anything that's already zoned multifamily or has a
Yes,
spud.
Yes, I could certainly discuss that. Would you mind going to that photo with the truck parked in the drive? Maybe go back 2 or 3 pictures. There's from the angle, the white building that's right on the corner lot. Maybe we can get a view of that. There's a yellow building there that is a garage with a second floor. That pink building in that picture does not have a garage door, is being used as a second story, 2-story accessory structure. It's got its own meter on that building as well. If
The
you go,
pink house does not have a garage?
does not have a garage. That pink structure there, 2-story, same height, does not have a garage. If you were to go to a couple photos prior, you could see the white house on the opposite side, right on the corner lot. That one does not have a garage. It's used as a 2-story accessory structure. If I were to talk about what my use will be for the building, I occupy the residence and I intend to live there for a very long time. If that would be something that's a consideration, I'd be happy to discuss what I intend to use the building for. And if maybe something that I can have approved, I can have some sort of contingency that that's the use of the property. I'd
Did
be happy to
this
do
house historically, I mean, it historically had a 1-story garage, correct?
So the structure you see right there is the structure on the screen is the previous historic garage auto house.
This is what was demoed without a permit?
Yes, or has been heavily altered.
It's not a garage. No garage door.
No.
It's not even set up to be able to be
Yeah,
changed to be one.
correct. It's not a garage. It was never a garage. But if that photo, I should say that there was 3 buildings present at that site. I believe it was early 2000s. It was allowed to be demoed. So that garage location is off the
Is that
curb.
not a garage door? I mean,
See the truck there on that photo? That's where the driveway started, on a garage. There was a 3rd building on the site, and that was prior
There was
garage.
historically a garage on this site,
A different building though. Different.
but there was I mean, the accessory structure was a garage.
See-
The
see-
large accessory structure was a garage. How about that?
I think he's saying there was another
Right.
building.
There's a
That was
whole
not-
nother building not attached, and it was on that. See where that light pole is? That would have been the
And
first.
do we know when that
garage.
other building was built? Was it original to the home, or
I
was
believe it
this?
was. I believe it was close to.
It was
original, right?
that was a later construction, and they did get a CA previous owner got a CA to demolish that other building. What I will say is that we know there was an accessory structure. It looks very similar to many early 20th century carriage houses that are throughout the historic district. The Sanborn map describes it as an auto house every year in the Sanborn maps that we have showing the structure. We have photos from July 2022 that are on the Google Street View that show what appears to be a garage door in a garage door opening. The applicant does not believe that it ever functioned as a garage. I don't know that it's relevant one way or the other. There was an accessory building here that was historic, that had a certain appearance, a certain architectural character, and that is what they are proposing to replace. We know we have garages throughout the districts that have been modified to no longer function as garages. I think the relevant point is whether or not the proposed design is appropriate and compatible to the property, and ultimately, when they go to get a building permit, whether or not the use is something that's legal.
So where I struggle on the design part of it is finding number 3. It says municipal code does not support the reconstruction or expansion of non-conforming structures. That one seems pretty clear.
May I say something? in line with what Katie had been just talking about with the city. My mom had briefly mentioned that the general contractor working this project was here for 2 hours. Unfortunately, the time to Steve wasn't allowed any more time. But I did want to mention bringing him here under Katie's direction that was highly advised. He's going to take complete ownership of this project. He's done many projects just like in the historic preservation, in the historic district. He was going to highlight a lot of addresses that you may be familiar with, and he's done some professional work. He had pictures and things to note. And addresses for the record. And he's licensed and bonded, and he has all the materials necessary to complete this project. And to go along with what Katie was saying, I wanted to mention local ordinances and code are absolutely going to be followed under his direction, as well as my own. And my mom's here to also attest to that. If I can help with urging, the use of the property and have this passed, I really would do that, and I'm on the record here for that. This building is in its current state, is gonna deteriorate over the winter, and I could really use some help and guidance if I can have staff approve things separately. If there's any little details or add-ons, I'd be absolutely thrilled to work directly with Katie.
The only thing that I would be comfortable approving at this site is a traditional 2-story garage. I would never in any world approve something with an exterior staircase to 2 separate access points that for all intents and purposes is popping a duplex in the back of this yard. I mean, that is, and I said that last meeting too, I feel like this is a resubmittal. We brought up the 2 doors multiple times. There's not a world in which I would be comfortable approving that. 2-story garage, seems like you've made your case, that staff's made their case, that one existed there. Nothing to do about that. There's plenty right around that stretch in the neighborhood. But I feel like this commission is being asked to place a duplex in the backyard, and I am extremely uncomfortable with it.
So what was the existing, what did the existing building prior to being torn down function as? It probably functioned as a duplex.
It has a garage door on it.
No,
No,
garage
so which
door.
is the one that we just saw?
The main difference with what is in the picture where it's got the yellow siding versus the structure that is like a skeleton is that there, where the placement of the windows was, one window walked out just like off of the ledge. It was not safe. And the other thing was a huge staircase indoors that was basically holding up the existing structure. It's the only thing that was not falling apart inside, and so now the staircase is outside.
And to go along with that picture there is, it may have been after they started working on it. That picture there is not a testament to what it looked like prior. There was a window there, and the framing was original 100-year-old wood.
So
certify that.
why would the assumption be that that was historically a duplex in the backyard?
I mean, because ADUs, I mean, these detached dwellings functioned as that all over.
As duplexes?
Sure. I mean, if it's 2-story, I mean,
But
there's an assumption that it could have been a duplex.
There's no garage door and no place that a garage door makes sense. Pavement does not allow for that. You would, if you went up the driveway, you would hit a barrier. There's no way that it was ever.
What is that? What is that in the current picture? That's the old one that got removed, right?
That used to have a window there. If you were to look at the bottom right of that building, there was a window. It was vertical from the ground all the way to the top. And then it had the original lumber framed all the way along the wall. Unfortunately, that wall was falling completely out. It was crumbled underneath. It was a hazard to the neighborhood.
It was scary to even walk in there. It was tilted.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
Yes.
Katie, is a duplex something we would ever approve right now?
think that would
If I want to put one in my backyard, would we approve
I
it?
think perhaps we need the applicant to explain the intended use of the structure, because he is not proposing a duplex. He's not asking to rezone to allow a duplex. He's not showing a kitchen. He is showing what appears to be 4 offices and 2 bathrooms, which is not typical of a residential property. So I think that might be helpful.
Thank you, Katie. That's a good point. What was depicted on the 2D scale is based on the conversation I had with Katie. My intent for the use is I have about, 3 garage doors worth of tools I would certainly like to use. this building for that for the first floor. Second floor, I'd like to use as an office. I've got 2 computers. I'm going to work directly with my mom. I've got quite a few properties. We're going to work on having potentially 7 Airbnbs this year, maybe a couple more.
So you want to
Short-term
use the downstairs portion as a
storage
workshop?
Storage for my tools is a big intent for that.
Currently, he's storing a lot of his things for work within his living quarters, like.
So then
stuff
why
that he's
couldn't it be a
purchased.
garage?
So
just out of-
this would be more for.
I feel like we're
storage.
getting really complicated. I mean, why
Well-
couldn't this just be a garage with a second
Garage-
story?
The garage isn't
It's-
what's needed, it's also what wasn't historically there.
It's not, under the way that it's located on elevations, there's no way to do that. There would be a tremendous amount of trouble on your part and mine as far as design and use.
Because of the grading?
But I did have the application for a garage on my last application. Unfortunately, we didn't really get to the next step of what you would like to have for that. I would really, really like to build a single-story garage there, very modest, and that's something Katie and I talked about in our one-to-one meeting with my mom. It would be very lovely to have potentially a 2-stall garage right there where that truck is. That whole design feature of that, where that prior garage is a very adequate location for a garage, and that's absolutely what I'd love to do. If I can make this my forever home and have a garage, that'd be absolutely
So
wonderful.
why isn't that just proposed as the garage? I mean, if you want a garage, and we don't want you to have a garage and an
It
accessory
does feel like we're
structure.
getting like some mixed communication on
Yeah.
what the actual intent is. I mean, if you're storing tools and stuff, generally, and you're using it as a workshop, generally you want the access of a garage door to be able to open that and move things in and out.
So Katie, can we just look at what's on the application, what's being proposed? Because I think we're getting a lot of dialogue that we've had before in the past, and it wasn't accurate in the past, so.
And I would deny it with prejudice.
Restored to what was
Yeah,
there.
my intent is just to restore to what was there. And my use of the property, there's multiple things I could use it for, and one of them is a very safe, viable option for my tools right now, and that would be what I want to use it right now for. In the future, when my mom and I have great operations and we want to expand operations through office space, that's what maybe we can potentially do in the future.
You know,
So
And
if it was,
and
if it
again-
was if it was a 2-story with access to both stories and was an empty slate on the inside, would it be approvable?
So, yes, you all can approve a 2-story accessory structure that you deem to be appropriate, compatible with the historic district, consistent with the guidelines. Basing that upon the design of the exterior of the building. As that goes forward to get an actual building permit, they're going to look at what the use of that building is in consultation with HP staff. They're going to have to provide detailed, accurate floor plans. And if that floor plan shows something that is not consistent with the zoning for the HP district, then they're not going to be able to get a building permit for it. And they're going to have to go back to the drawing board.
And I would agree to doing
So I
that.
think the concern is they didn't get permits for anything else. So
Correct.
if there's an
Yep.
ability for us to deny it, to prevent that from happening again in the future, this would be one opportunity for us to do that, correct? By denying this application.
So if you deny this application, then that's correct. They would not be able to go forward and get a building permit.
We asked in the last several meetings that, over the past couple of years in which this has come up, we've consistently asked whether you've discussed with neighborhood or with the Mesta Park Preservation Review Committee. We get a lot of complaints about this from the neighbors, and often they're here. Has there been any discussion with them about what this use is going to be? We have a pretty lengthy commentary for Mesta Park right now.
For the use of
From the use of this accessory dwelling, because what the neighbors are stating is really inconsistent with what you're stating. And while we are not here to review that use, one recommendation we gave you was to get with the neighborhood review committee and to get with the neighbors. So I'm just curious if any conversation has taken place.
Part of the conversation that's also been had is that too much conversation has been done with the neighbors on what they think. And one of the recommendations in the letter that you have is that he should have, everything should just be gone.
So since last month, has any conversation been had with the Mesta Park Design or Preservation Review Committee or with the neighbors who have been raising the complaints?
There hasn't been any conversations with the committee. I thought my next step was to have this meeting here today.
Well,
That's my
last
understanding.
month, we did communicate pretty strongly that it was important to reach out, there's, part of the reason it's complicated is because your neighbors are sending in letters stating that what you're saying about what's happening here is very different from what they are saying is what's happening here. To get on the same page with your neighbors and with that committee, we really value those opinions, as you saw in these other cases that we heard today. Those are extremely valuable.
Yes.
Right now, I don't see any way that I would be personally comfortable approving what's before me.
If I were to go off of the conversation about the neighbors, then what started a lot of this is the application for a home share. With the intent of making an Airbnb caused a lot of trouble in the neighborhood. I didn't actually know that that was going to be a concept when I intended to put the application in. What's happening today is, from the basis of that not being allowed, recommended from the commission, there was kind of a point where we kind of discussed, if this building was built, maybe we could rediscuss the home sharing application. However, I would like to say to the commission that I do not intend to make this a home share at any point in the next probably decade, because I'm probably going to be there for the next decade. And my plans have changed, and my girlfriend's here to talk about that if you want to ask her. Our future plans together. This is our future home. This is where I want to raise my family.
Any members?
I struggle with the design of it as well. I mean, it feels like you're trying to kind of pull one over on us in terms of, calling it an office when it could potentially be, living quarters further down the line. And quite frankly, I just feel like this is a great spot for the garage. And I guess I'm struggling to understand why you wouldn't turn this into a garage with an office on top and then not have to come back to us later for another structure in a garage and more hardscapes on this particular lot and everything that entails.
I mean, we could approve that so easily, an appropriate garage with an apartment. I feel like I'm looking at 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms.
If it helps.
With 2 access points.
Back to that point where majority of the buildings down that alley are going to be the same fit and form and design, height. Everything's the exact same.
Well, they're existing, and one was existing, and it was torn down.
Well, to go with that, with the economic factors that we had discussed, a different application, that's in present moment here today. If you look at the foundation height and where the foundation is from the street level, it'd be an enormous undertaking. And to put it frankly, to build a second garage would actually be much, much more affordable than making any alterations to this current foundation and structure. And that's where I come in. I would really like to just have that conversation about a 1-story at a future meeting, if at all possible.
And I think we can't move forward. I mean, I don't see a scenario, as long as I'm on this commission, where I would approve another structure on this site. I mean, if one may have existed, I don't know, because it's all been torn down without a permit or a CA. So for me, I mean, if you get this today, I don't see a scenario in which I would then go approve a 1-story garage.
Could I ask one more thing? What if the staircase is in the inside? It sounded like that was something you had talked about. The staircase being the outside is mostly to conform to other houses that have a second structure, and that's what my intent was with my design.
It feels like it's to create 2 accesses for 2 separate dwellings.
How about if I were to change the one small concept, no staircase and no second door on the second floor? Would that change your opinion?
I don't know that that would change my opinion.
I'd be happy to do that if it did.
We had that discussion the last time, and so that's what.
If at all possible, if that would change any opinion on the board, I would be more than delighted to make that alteration. And if that could be done with staff, I'd be more than happy to do that. These from the beginning of my speech, that was something I wanted to highlight, is I am more than happy to make those kind of changes to make this.
This application, it has been modified to be simple. And I can't stress enough that the only thing that is being requested is to replace the structure that was there. It was the structure that was there when he purchased it. He believed he'd be able to repair it. There were issues. And so where we are right now is that the footprint is there for that building to be replaced, and every spec within that is the same, except for the staircase was inside. It was the only thing holding up the structure, and moving some of the windows because it wasn't safe. If you see facing the alley, that's actually like a door where somebody would just walk right out.
Yes.
There really isn't a space to put anything else there, and it was not safe. He has a child, he has nieces and nephews that come to this house. It was not safe. I didn't feel safe going in there, and we didn't trust that a child was gonna walk in there either.
I mean, I agree with all of that, and I can see that very clearly. I just, a couple of things here for me are that I feel like I'm looking at a duplex or a commercial structure, and I'm not going to be made comfortable with that today. I also feel that, while we can't weigh any future plans or proposals, you are, telling us that you plan to come back and ask for a garage, and I just don't understand why we can't just investigate this being a garage on one site.
If I answer that point, the prior application, if I were to say the prior application, instead of the second floor on that garage application, I would just not have a second floor, a very simple, very modest single floor garage. That's a future application. However, to that point of, to that point of making any changes necessary, I'm more than happy to do that. If any other board member wanted to talk about little specifics and the detail, even the detail in the design, the use of the material, I'm happy to make the windows whatever material. I can do the siding, any type of siding you recommend. I truly want to restore this site, and
So-
we're on a corner lot, and it's got a bunch of sticks in the ground, and I would really like to fix it. And my neighbors, I know they'd either like me to tear it down or fix it. And if I can get any advice or guidance or any changes you just deem necessary, I'm more than happy to make them right now.
I think our
I don't-
advice
I
and
don't-
guidance is the garage with
Yeah,
an
I don't see
apartment.
this being approved today. One of the challenges we have is that the code doesn't support reconstruction or expansion of non-conforming structures. This currently is a non-conforming structure. What you have, not in that picture, but what you've built is a non-conforming structure. The other piece too is that it looks like we need lots and lots of revised designs and specific plans in order to at least push this project forward. We don't have that today either. I think we need a continuance. Either a continuance or a denial.
What
and
design?
So that,
Sorry.
so that you can come back with some of the notes and revised designs that staff has recommended, and then figure out what you need to do to get the structure that you've got there to be conforming, if that's at all possible, by turning it into a garage of some sort. But right now, it's a non-conforming structure, and we can't do anything with that.
Did you ask if there was anybody in the audience that wanted to speak?
I have not.
May I ask one more question? The idea that it has its own address and historically has been that way, would that make it deemable that we could keep the stairs on the inside and have that as a thought?
Do we have that anywhere documented, other than being told?
I think we would need to, that's the conversation we would need to have with plan review and with subdivision and zoning to confirm that it had a separate address and confirm what, if anything, that means related to the use of the structure. I didn't want to, just for the applicant's sake going forward, aside from concerns about the use, are there any specific comments from the commission particular to the design as proposed beyond what's already in the staff report?
I don't necessarily have a problem with the design. I do think there was a two-story structure there before that was not a garage. So, I mean, that's, if they want to put a two-story structure back there, it's hard for us to state what the purpose of that is. It looks obvious what it is, but that's why I was asking if they are within the guidelines to have a two-story structure, then it may be something that has to be dealt with through permits. But I think that all the questions about the stairs on the inside or the outside, I think there's too many things that are subjective that you're talking about. So I'd like to make a motion.
We need to check if there's any members of the public. So.
Okay.
Is there any members of the public that wish to speak on this particular item? Okay. Sorry, Commissioner.
In fairness to the applicant, I know what some of the comments were, but I would make a motion for a continuance on HPCA 23-00148 to January or February?
January, please.
To January, whatever that date is.
January 3rd.
January 3rd, to allow the applicant to work with staff on the multitude of questions that have come up today.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Gaines, second by Commissioner Whitley. Please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that continuance passes unanimously. We will move on to item number 7. That actually concludes all our cases for individual consideration. Moving on to item number 7, which we have a SPUD. It's SPUD 01587 at 2820 North Robinson Avenue.
This is located in Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Brooks Magnus, Jellybird Design for Raymond Jacobs to request a recommendation from the Historic Preservation Commission to the Planning Commission regarding a request to rezone to a simplified plan unit development in accordance with the regulations of the R4 Residential District, HL District, and Jefferson Park Urban Conservation Zoning District, except with restrictions and uses as called out within the proposed SPUD. So we have seen a number of these types of SPUD applications over the last several years. Because of the way our current zoning is written and the bulk regulations in place, the requirements for certain lot widths and lot sizes and height restrictions, it is very difficult to build a traditional form of multifamily residential development, even in an area that is zoned for multifamily, even in areas where we have existing multifamily. This is a lot that had a multifamily structure historically that was demolished, that we've had some debate over whether it was at a fourplex at one point or just a duplex, but was a larger, more than a single family structure. They are asking to be allowed single family, 2-family, 3 and 4 family, and multifamily residential uses with a maximum of 8 attached dwellings, and to vary other bulk regulations with the SPUD to allow for that form of construction. They are not proposing any changes to accommodate a future lot split, which is something we've also seen asked for lately. They intend to keep it all in one ownership. That could be a rental product. It could be condominiums within the building in the future, but they don't intend to subdivide the lot as part of the development. Some of the items of note with the SPUD, it will remain in the historic landmark overlay, so all future construction would require design review. Changes to uses, as I noted, would allow more dwellings than they would be allowed to build at this time. It also removes the height limitation that's currently in place for properties abutting historic districts that limits them to 20 feet in 1 story. Keeps a front setback and a side setback that are consistent with the surrounding character, and proposes a minimum of 1 parking space per dwelling. You all have received comments from the Neighborhood Association and other neighbors. I would summarize main concerns as related to lot coverage and to whether or not adequate parking is being provided at the site based upon the number of dwellings that would be permitted. So staff did provide a recommendation of approval that would go on to Planning Commission and then subsequently on to City Council.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present?
Hi, Fallon Brooks Magnus, representing the applicant, 733 Northwest 22nd Street. Yeah, where do you want me to start?
Talk to us about parking and water runoff.
Yeah, so parking, one of the reasons that we did, there's on 28th Street, there's a long stretch of curb right in front of the property. And so what we wanted to do is rely on that to put in our SPUD, which honestly, if we were in 10-pin, we would get away with. Not that that's a reason for us to get away with something, but it's adjacent to the lot, like it's not, we're not impeding, it's right there. We're not relying on street parking a block away or across the street or anything like that. It's kind of, it's all compact right in there. The other thing that we wanted to do is there's a power pole right here. And so we were actually going to cut into the curb. That's what's on the site plan. We felt like it would make it cleaner, and you wouldn't have cars sitting out in the street. They would be tucked into the right-of-way So that's the parking. The other reason is it's now anything more than 3 units, you have to have a dumpster instead of polycarts. So that eliminates some parking in the rear. And so in order to accommodate that, we had to move our parking off-site.
So that parking is cut into the right-of-way?
Say that again?
Your parking, you show there on 28th Street, that's actually cut into the right-of-way?
Yeah.
Is it parallel?
It's outside of our lot, but we're actually cutting into the curb to get it off the street, essentially.
So is it parallel spots?
Yes,
Okay,
sorry,
gotcha.
there's 4 parallel spots, and it's on the site plan that's in there.
Sorry.
And I'll just
Don't
note
have.
that that is something that the SPUD does not include or address because
It
the SPUD
does.
the SPUD can't regulate use of the right-of-way.
No, but
You would
it
have
can.
to go to
Okay, I see what you're
Traffic
saying, sorry.
Commission to get approval to do that. But you can, just under general parking regulations in the municipal code, you can count on-street parking as toward your parking minimums.
Yes, and that's what we put in there, and we figured we would have to go to Traffic Commission and take care of that.
So that was one item of discussion for the commission. We typically ask people to remove cut in on-street parking like that, not to install it. So that would be, this would come back before you for a CA eventually anyway, but that would be one item to note if that's something the commission would generally support as a way to mitigate concerns about parking.
What is the biggest historic, like not that one that we're just seeing, but, so not that one because I don't believe that to be original or historic, but what is the biggest historic, biggest is vague. What is the most dense multi-unit, multifamily structure in this part of Jefferson Park? Do we have any other 8plexes that are historic?
There's plenty of 8plexes around.
That are
but
historic?
I can't tell you exactly where in relation on this one.
north
but
of
they're
30th.
very typical. What?
North of 30th on Robinson.
North of 30th, there are,
No,
a
tons of
lot.
them, yeah. Well, there's actually 28th Street, it's between Walker and whatever the next one to the east is. There's a whole street of where one side is just like all 8plexes. So they're very common in the neighborhood. And that could be one, I don't know, without like really looking at it. It's not.
I don't see any justification to, deny a rezoning for this to be multifamily since it was historically so, but I have concerns about an 8plex. That's a lot of action going on. It's a lot of, it's a really small open space ratio. For me, it's not necessarily the rezoning, it's the proposed amount.
So
With minimal parking too.
I'll tell you from reading through the letters that we got, one of the concerns was lot coverage. Lot coverage was not listed. It's actually 55%, and that's not including parking, because what we had intended to do with parking was probably like crushed granite or something like that, because we don't want to pave the whole alley to street standards. It's already gravel.
We can't do that, can we? Can we do crush?
If it's in our zoning language, we can do that. But we're not paving the alley.
Yeah. HP has guidelines about pavement materials. There's more flexibility where it's not visible from the right-of-way, et cetera.
It's in there, yeah. So that was the big concern, that and the setbacks. The setbacks were actually, from what was in the original MDS, have been altered. They are very much in line with every other lot on the street now. We have 5 feet on each side, 25 in the front, and then I think 10 or 15 in the rear. And the only thing that we were trying to push on the setbacks was on the 28th Street side. We wanted to make it 0 feet just so that we had enough room to widen the building, because 8 units. So, but we pulled it back 5 feet and found a way to make it work. So, so our setbacks are pretty much the same as they are now.
I'm not bothered by an 8plex. Just because there's not one immediately adjacent to it doesn't mean that it's still not appropriate to the context of the neighborhood when we know that neighborhood has other 8plexes. We allow street parking all the time, and it sounds like you're trying to work to get it in a little bit so it's not immediately on the street anyway. I don't have a problem with this. I don't. It sounds like you're obviously open to working with us, and you've adjusted the setback, and I'm for approval personally.
I am too. We need to check with citizens though. Anybody that wishes to speak on this particular project? Can you please state your name and address for the record, too?
John Miley, 2900 North Robinson Avenue. And my wife and I and all of our neighbors are very opposed to this going in. Historically, for 75 years, it was a duplex. When we moved in 2013, it was a duplex. And a guy was trying to change it into a single-family dwelling, but he didn't have enough money to get it done, and it fell down before he could get that accomplished. This is one city lot. It's not big enough for an 8-plex. They don't have enough parking for even all the units there. So, and right now, you know, everyone, you know, there is a little bit of street parking, but there's not a lot of street parking. This is gonna bring a lot of street parking, a lot of congestion to this little block that goes from Robinson to the wall at I-235, a block later. So this is, it's going to be a building that dwarfs all others in the neighborhood. It's going to stick out like a sore thumb. It is going to be something that is absolutely not historically correct. It, again, if you look at the house that's kind of, that's diagonal across the street. Let's see. That's similar to the one there. Now, that's an upstairs, downstairs duplex. We understand that. That one, yeah, that one right there. Yeah, that one, that's an upstairs, downstairs duplex. And that's similar to what was there before. That one was kept up and it's occupied right now. But this one, this is going to be, if you fill all those units up, you will double the population of that street, okay? So we are very opposed and very concerned. A duplex would be fine. That's what was historically there. If we're talking about going back and creating the historical flavor of the neighborhood, that's what it was. Now, there's eightplexes on bigger lots, and they all have off-street. There's one down at 27th, but they're on a lot bigger lot, and they have parking places for all the residents off-street. They don't park, you know, they don't have to park all over the neighborhood. And there's another one, I believe on 27th, that I think it's a very modern design, so it was done before the Historic Preservation District was established, I guess. But, you know, there was, yeah, that one right there. But they had enough room to put off-street parking there, and they paved it all. And this building is going to take up every square inch of that land on that one city block. Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling with an 8-plex as well. Sorry. I know, Fallon, you said that lot coverage was at 55%, but that was without any parking accounted for, correct?
I believe so.
I'm struggling with an 8-plex. I'm not struggling at all with the SPUD and with multifamily, but I'm struggling with an 8-plex.
Sure, yeah. So this building right here, that parking that they have been able to acquire is in the public right-of-way. So they are, actually, they don't have any parking spaces on their site. The other thing is what we originally presented had 14 parking spaces, and it had units that all faced 28th Street like this, and city staff came back and said, we don't like this. So we changed it, and we came up with something that was a lot more traditional, and there should have been a render in the packet. It's not the most current updated render, but there is one. And so what we're trying to put in place is not, it won't stick out like a sore thumb. As a matter of fact, it's actually modeled after a building located currently at 1603 North Classen Boulevard that we're about to tear down. The columns are literally identical. Like we went out and scanned them with a LiDAR scan so that we would know exactly the dimensions of it to recreate them. We didn't have a lot of great photos of this that weren't, obscured by trees and things. Oh, there's one. There's one. And then the other thing that I just want to point out is I'm not doing this development for somebody that's from out of state, that's coming in and trying to put in as many units as possible. Chad Rice is a dear friend of mine, but he's also my landlord, and I'll tell you, he's a good landlord. And he lives in Mestre Park, so he's local. And then lastly, not that it has any bearing at all, but I just want to say the Adeline was my mother's name. So this is a building that we're not trying to put something crazy that doesn't fit. And as far as the dimensions of the building, there are duplexes and quadplexes that are the same size. Ours are just smaller units. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Does the property itself have the eightplex, does it have bearing on the SPUD? Or is that further down the line?
It does, it's in the SPUD language.
Of units,
Katie?
yeah.
I mean, the design doesn't have to be reflected here, but
The eightplexes.
The SPUD
does.
allows for multifamily with a maximum of 8 units. So if you all were comfortable generally with the rezoning, but not comfortable with that number of units, you could certainly include a condition as part of your recommendation that the number of units be reduced to a specific number, or just that they be reduced to be more consistent with adjacent properties, or, there are a number of ways you could.
I mean, it looks like staff is comfortable with it, so I was kind of curious why staff was comfortable with it, but also did cite that they've exceeded the, let's see, where is it? That the proposed SPUD is allowing a density that's in excess of the density allowed by current, never mind, I misread that, ignore me.
Fallon, Mr. Miley had mentioned that some of the other multiple unit properties were on bigger lots.
They are not. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that I'm working on a project at 425 Northwest 28th Street, and it's an 8-plex on a 7,000 square foot lot. And all of the neighboring structures are 8-plexes on 7,000 square foot lots. Very typical.
So would they have basically the same set asides that,
so
this
they
one
would
has
have the same
5 foot set
side.
aside?
They would have the same setbacks. Those buildings are sometimes a little bit narrower so that you can accommodate a driveway, but often they have a shared driveway. And then I'll also point out that the only reason that many of those buildings are able to meet any parking minimums is because, and when they don't meet any parking minimums now, but they are not required to have dumpsters on their property. They have rolling carts like we do at our houses. And so because of that requirement, that's where we're having a problem with the parking. And I'll point out too that the reason that we're doing an 8-plex is for no other reason than nothing but 8 units makes economical sense on this lot. Everything's expensive right now. It just is what it is, so.
Okay.
Yeah, well, there's not enough parking places. Now, the one that was down the street, that I don't know, she said there was parking on the right-of-way. Well, I don't know about that, but it's on their lot, and they have parking behind the building as well. Yeah, in front and behind. Lots of spaces, okay? So, no, there is not enough parking for an 8-plex here. Also, none of the other houses on this street have dumpsters. We don't do dumpsters. If they had a duplex, they could use the rolling carts. I just don't think that, just because they paid too much for the land and it's too much for building materials and it's all that stuff, that, they feel like they want to make more money on the land, that everybody else in the neighborhood ought to suffer. We have to abide by the historic building codes. They need to abide by the historic building codes and do it historically, which is a duplex. And if you can't make it work there, then you just have to do something else.
Yes, sir.
Randy Ice, 119 Northwest 19th Street. You have our written comments. We met with Jefferson Park. All the historic neighborhoods met on Sunday on the other issue, and this came up. They could not be here, and they asked us to send in comments affirming their other recommendation, and you have those. I just want to comment on something I heard here today, that we approve on-street parking all the time for new development. And I just don't, I want you to understand what that does in a neighborhood. It pits neighbor against neighbor, okay? Because there's never enough. Because people have overnight guests, they come in, and when you have one parking per unit, that's a big problem at that point. But I'm telling you, I've seen people come to fisticuffs in the street over somebody parking in front of their house. Okay, it's not good. These neighborhoods were built because there were streetcar lines. Okay, and people didn't have a lot of cars in 1910. All right, they were walking or they were taking a streetcar. Today they have cars. Their significant other has cars. Their guests have cars, and it turns into a fight over a parking spot. So I want you to always think about it when the neighbors complain about parking anywhere in these districts. Remember what it does when you approve that. It puts them in a position of personal conflict.
Thank you.
Fallon, is each unit a one-bedroom, one-bath?
Okay, well, we've heard from the citizens, heard from the applicant. Do we have a motion?
I mean, you know my thoughts. I'm happy to make a motion to
Let's hear
approve,
it.
but, okay.
The motion is for a recommendation.
Yes,
to the-
sorry.
Okay.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve, or make a recommendation to approve SPUD 01568 with specific findings.
Excellent. Do we have a second? You want to second that one? Okay, do we have another motion then?
I feel like it warrants more discussion. I think it's a really monumental change to what currently exists in the neighborhood. And I'm not saying I could never get there, but I think it needs more discussion, and my motion would be to continue it. Well, you can't really continue that. How does that work?
I mean, you could continue it if the applicant is amenable to that, to further discussion. They have already been noticed for planning commission meeting, so they're already docketed for that, and our next meeting would be after that planning commission.
I mean, I would be open to a motion that reflected I don't know, how many units is a mystery though, without seeing like parking and things. So I would be open to.
So I can tell you this, we're not gonna do less than 8 units, we're just not. We might be able to get 8 parking spaces on the property, and we are absolutely willing to go down that road. If that makes our units a little smaller, we're okay with that. So if parking is the only thing that's getting the commission to get there, then we'll work with it. I mean, remember that this has to come back before you guys for approval. This is just for zoning. So
I will say that parking is my concern, only because it does look like, I mean, I like the design. I like from what limited parts of the design you have. And I suppose if it has to come back and we can look at it then, I may feel differently about it, because if it's, I mean, from the side, it looks a little crowded on the 28th Street, but from the front on Robinson, I think it looks like the house across the street. So if it comes back, if we can work on the parking and try to eliminate some of that on-street parking, I think that would be important. Because if each one's one bedroom, you can't presume that they're all going to be single residents in there, because it's going to be expensive. You're going to have young people that are going to have roommates.
Bedroom?
So I don't have roommates.
How about spouses, partners?
I'll just note that, Planning Commission navigates how many is too many units, how much is not enough parking all the time. That is their area of kind of negotiation and of evaluating projects, working with applicants, working with residents. I think that this commission could forward on a recommendation to Planning Commission that captures that as a general concern without having necessarily nailed down this is exactly what we want the applicant to do now. And Planning Commission is going to take that information. They're going to take all of these comments from the neighborhoods, from residents. Hopefully some folks who showed up here today or who sent letters will also show up for Planning Commission if they feel the need to express those concerns. And that will continue to be part of the discussion going forward from today.
Does Caitlin need to amend hers, or can you, or you attend those meetings?
I typically go, particularly if there's one that's been to HP Commission that was where there were any concerns expressed.
So you can
just so
express
I
our
can,
concerns.
yeah. But I do think that if there's anything else you want captured in the motion about concerns over parking, number of units, et cetera, it would be good to formally include that in the recommendation so that they have that in writing. And that'll go into the Planning Commission staff report.
I think if you can include that in your motion, then I'll second it.
So is that just parking, or is that parking and number of units?
No, I think just parking, the on-street parking concern.
Okay.
Fallon had said they can reduce the size and make
Right.
more parking. So
Yeah, I would be happy to include that. They said it's going to come back before us anyway. They have more purview over that, so I can
Let's hear it.
make a motion to approve or recommend approval for SPUD 01568 with staff-specific findings and with, or I guess noting concerns about on-street parking for Planning Commission to take into consideration.
Okay.
Is that good
Sounds
enough?
great.
Fine.
Moved by Commissioner Whitley, second by Commissioner Gaines. Please vote in PrimeGov. Did everybody vote?
It's showing pass, but it's not showing any votes.
It's not showing the votes. Well, the SPUD is approved and passed, or recommended for approval. Thank you. All right. Moving on to item number 8. Do we need to do anything with the administrative approvals? We had 8 administrative approvals, no withdrawals, no administrative closings, nothing from City Council, nothing from the Board of Adjustment, nothing from Planning Commission. Rita?
Nothing.
Nothing from Municipal Counselor's Office. And, give me 1 second. Where's F1 and F2? What did I do? Lost my stuff. All right. Let's see. Pardon me.
Next meeting date.
Yep. Next regularly scheduled meeting day for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, January 3rd, 2 p.m. here in the Municipal Building, City Council Chambers. New applications for the meeting were received December 5th. New information on projects continued from today's meeting. For the upcoming meetings must be submitted to staff by Tuesday, December 12th at 4 p.m. The next regularly scheduled workshop for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, December 13th from 11:30 to 1:30 at 431 West Main Street in Embark's large conference room.
Are we still doing that?
Is that correct?
So I think we will probably
Okay.
punt that one with holidays and everything.
Okay.
Nobody's ever available, and we haven't had time to prepare anything meaningful for you all.
So likely that scheduled workshop will be canceled.
Okay.
I'll send an email.
Be on the lookout.
Items from commissioners, is it?
Okay, items from
Wait,
commissioners.
I have 2 items and I swear they're fast.
They better be.
I feel like we're doing a little bit of disservice to our applicants by not having pretty regular attendance. I don't know how that's properly addressed, but, you know, I mean, the attendance is a problem. And today we saw what that looks like when it's a deadlock. So I don't know how to address that, but
We should see more people here more often.
Noted.
that came up during the COVID thing, but there's never been a requirement on attendance.
So there are provisions that allow for the mayor to replace a commission member who is not regularly attending. I can't quote the exact wording in the ordinance, but that's not something that has regularly happened. Typically, if someone has really consistently not been showing up, we've had a conversation with them about, you know, what's going on, that sort of thing. Maybe they've stepped down. We've not usually had somebody get kicked off, but it's certainly something that we can follow up with people on to kind of reach out and say, you haven't been here, is there an issue? Kind of feel that out, so.
I think that's a fair point, especially when you have some of these cases that get continued 2 or 3 times. You know, like some of the, like the demolition case we had today at Bethesda. You know, it's like when you have people that are here for one, here for not, or whatever it is, it sometimes just makes things difficult because you don't always have the full information.
It's a disservice to the people who are having to get our approval.
Right.
I agree.
Another thing?
Oh, I feel like we keep bumping the workshops, and
Yes.
I think we also owe that to the people to have a public workshop and, you know, to kind of move forward on like the solar and the other things
Yeah.
we're discussing.
Yeah.
Okay, any citizens that wish to be heard, or any other items from commissioners? Are you gonna go down that side and make something? All right, well, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, guys.